Chapter 549. This person was none other than one of the 9 sword sovereigns of the Battle Sword sect, the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness. She was also Li Hanyo's master. At the instant she appeared, the gazes of everyone landed on her. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness was still as young and beautiful as ever, looking to be in her 30s. However, her countenance was solemn, and her eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of life. From this, one could see that she wasn't young anymore. It was only because of her strength that she looked young. Everyone recalled the rumors regarding the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness. This woman's way of doing things was eccentric and willful, doing whatever she wanted, never listening to the opinions of others. She was lofty and aloof, and even the sect leader of the Battle Sword sect would find it hard to persuade her. This was the uniqueness of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness. The disciples of the Battle Sword sect all had their own personalities, and the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness was a perfect example. Although she was known to be ruthless, she was also extremely protective of her disciples. Her requirements were extremely harsh and strict. This was the first time Qin Wentian met the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness. Indeed, her personality was just like her voice, giving off an aura of arrogance, akin to a plum blossom standing proudly in winter. "Master!" Li Hanyu called out. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness glanced at her before nodding her head lightly. "Old witch, are you here for the treasure in my body as well?" The human emperor Yi Qingyan laughed. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness frowned when she heard how Yi Qingyan addressed her, but she wasn't truly angered. The human emperor was from the same generation as her, and the two of them were acquainted when they were young. There were many conflicts between them, and as time passed, their cultivation bases grew stronger and stronger. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness was still as beautiful as ever, hence, Yi Qingyan referred to her as an old witch. Yi Lingshuang was somewhat worried. Although the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness was also a disciple of the Battle Sword sect, her status was extremely high. She wouldn't care about an ordinary disciple like her. Also, based on her personality, who could stop her from doing what she wanted? If she was truly here for the human emperor's treasure, she wouldn't give up so easily. "This treasure is of some use to me." The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness spoke. The human emperor coldly snorted as he stared at the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness. "So it turns out that you are also such a vulgar person. Just a mere treasure. Do you really think you can dominate the immortal martial realm? In this place, only you, old witch, are from the Battle Sword sect. If you want it, I can give it to you." "Royal Father." Yi Lingshuang's countenance stiffened as she called out. The disciples of the Battle Sword sect all took a step forward. Duan Han stared up in the air as he called out. "Martial uncle, why must you force her against her will? In any case, do you really think that junior sister Lu needs to rely on treasures to contend for the top spot in the immortal martial realm?" Duan Han already understood the meaning of the human emperor's words. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness sat down. Her favorite disciple was none other than her personal disciple, Lu Bingyu. Lu Bingyu's talent was outstanding, and even among the Heavenly Dipper Sovereigness of the Battle Sword sect, she could be considered one of the most outstanding characters. Evidently, the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness had high hopes for her. "Duan Han, this is my business. This time around, you will also be entering the immortal martial realm. Remember not to tarnish the reputation of my Battle Sword sect." The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness emotionlessly spoke. Duan Han was a disciple under Sword Sovereign Ling Tian. She naturally knew him. As for the others, she wasn't very familiar with them. In the blink of an eye, it became the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigns guiding Duan Han, causing the disciples of the Battle Sword sect to be speechless. They also knew that they didn't have the ability to change the mind of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigns. At this moment, the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness turned her gaze onto the members of the Li clan below as she spoke. "Hanyu is my disciple. Can the members of the Li clan give this seat some face, and not interfere in this matter?" Li Hanyu's beautiful eyes flashed as she glanced at her second grandpa beside her. Her second grandpa's eyes flickered. The combat prowess of the human emperor was towering above the heavens. Although he was heavily injured, the strength of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness should be close to that of the human emperor. If they fought, they wouldn't be able to gain any benefits. As he thought of this, he laughed heartily. Since the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness has spoken, I won't interfere in this matter anymore. He was someone who could take things in stride. He originally didn't have absolute confidence in today's matter, and with the appearance of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness, his confidence grew even smaller. Hence he might as well give up. If the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness treated Li Hanyu better in the future and guided her, it wouldn't be a bad ending. Many thanks. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness nodded, after which, she turned her gaze onto the members of the Violet Thunder sect as she coldly spoke. Why are you all still not scramming? How long do you want to continue embarrassing yourselves? What status did the supremacy of the Violet Thunder sect have? His status was equivalent to the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness in the Battle Sword sect. Yet he was actually angered by a single sentence from the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness. However, he only saw the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness' countenance turning sharp as a surge of coldness gushed forth, enveloping the heavens and earth. At the same time, there were several silhouettes standing behind the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness, as though a battle would break out at the slightest disagreement. He understood that the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness definitely had the guts to back him up. See you again in the future. The supremacy of the Violet Thunder sect coldly snorted, after which, his silhouette flickered as he soared through the air. Today, the internal conflict in the Yi country had caused the strength of the ancient country to plummet. But the one who truly lost face was the Violet Thunder sect. Their losses were exceedingly heavy, and now they even had to return in defeat. If this matter were to spread, it would be a stain on the Violet Thunder sect's reputation. All of you remember this well. In the distance, a surging shout resounded like thunder, and it shook the sky and revealed monstrous rage. How could the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness care about threats? She turned her gaze downwards once more. Right now, only the three transcendent powers remained. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness faintly spoke. Do you all want to vie with me? The Grand Marshal King of the War Country frowned, silently musing at how powerful this woman was. With just a few words, she was able to make the Li clan give up and chase away the experts from the Violet Thunder sect. In that case, it was clear that she was the leader. The experts from the Spirit Luan country and the barbarian race were all staring at her. After which, the female general from the Spirit Luan country spoke. I've always respected the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness, an outstanding talent amongst females. In today's matter, if the human emperor of Yi is willing to hand over the treasure to the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness, I will definitely not snatch it away. This female general was truly intelligent. If the human emperor truly took the initiative to hand over the treasure to the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness, there was no way they would be able to snatch it away from her hands. Since this is the case, I will do the same. An expert from the barbarian race nodded. A strange light flashed in the eyes of the Grand Marshal King as he replied. If this is the case, I have nothing else to say. Only then did the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness feel satisfied. She then turned her gaze onto the human emperor as she slowly stated. I heard that the treasure has already fused together with you. In order to compensate you, if your daughter Yi Lingshuang is willing to enter my tutelage, I am willing to accept her as my disciple. The human emperor's countenance was as calm as ever. He turned his head and stared at Yi Lingshuang as he asked, Lingshuang, what do you think? Yi Lingshuang's countenance was filled with coldness as she stared at the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness. She replied, Today all the transcendent powers were pressuring my royal father. My royal father single-handedly fought against all of them, killing over 10 celestial phenomenon ascendants. How glorious was that? Yet there's actually someone who took advantage of him when he was in a precarious position. No matter how weak I, Yi Lingshuang, am, it's beneath me to be her disciple. Humph. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereignness coldly snorted, her eyes flashing with sharpness. Yi Lingshuang didn't show any signs of weakness, staring back at her as she icily spoke. Although you are an elder, I should respect you. But based on your actions, even if we meet again in the sect in the future, I won't bow to you. You should already know that so many experts were here today. If it wasn't for the fact that my royal father was ambushed from all directions, how could there be a chance for you to interfere? This seat won't hold it against you for today's matter. But if you dare to be so disrespectful again in the future, don't blame this seat for teaching you a lesson on behalf of the human emperor. The countenance of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness was ice-cold. Yet Yi Lingshuang's gaze was as stubborn as ever as she stared at her. Fine. The human emperor laughed uproariously. As expected of the daughter of Yi Qingyun, I already knew the ending of today's matter. I only wanted to let you all see clearly what happened, allowing you all to feel the glory of the great sections. The winner is the king, the loser is the vilified, the strong are revered. How could Yi Qingyun care about a mere treasure? After speaking, his palms abruptly grabbed towards his chest. A light sound rang out as fresh blood spurted out. The human emperor Yi Qingyun had actually plunged his palms into his body, causing blood and flesh to appear. Human emperor. Royal father. Numerous cries of shock rang out. The members of the royal clan were all taken aback. Yi Lingshuang's countenance paled, and even the spectators from the Battle Sword Sect and Medicine Sovereign Valley could feel a deep sense of sorrow in their hearts. How imposing was the human emperor of Yi. There was no fear in his countenance when he fought against so many experts, and even after killing so many, he still stood proudly in the sky. But in the end, he still couldn't win against the pressure of so many experts, resulting in him suffering such humiliation. Duan Han and the other disciples from the Battle Sword Sect all had expressions of respect on their faces. The human emperor of Yi was as expected of a hero of his generation. His demeanor was truly admirable. The matter regarding the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness caused them to feel extremely unhappy. Don't worry about it. The human emperor waved his hands when he saw everyone wanting to step forward, after which, his palms trembled as a small axe appeared from within his body. The axe light shone resplendently, exuding a terrifying might. A mere treasure? Could it be that my rise really depended on it? Ridiculous to the extreme. Take it. The human emperor flicked his palms as the small axe flew towards the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness. Fresh blood flowed unceasingly from his body, revealing his flesh and bones. This treasure was indeed able to fuse with his flesh and bones, and had long become one with him. This was why he had to use such a bloody method to dig it out. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness waved her hands, catching the small axe. The human emperor coldly spoke. I really want to see what rank your disciple Lu Bingyu can obtain in the immortal martial realm this time around. There's no need for you to worry. The Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness kept the treasure. Since she came here personally, she naturally had high hopes for Lu Bingyu. This treasure was obtained by the human emperor Yi Qingyun back then in the immortal martial realm. If it was fused with Lu Bingyu's body, it might be able to guide Lu Bingyu in the immortal martial realm. Not only that, the immortal martial realm rejected external divine weapons. With this treasure, Lu Bingyu's chances would naturally be much higher. She could only hope that Lu Bingyu wouldn't let her down. At this moment, the sound of wind whistling could be heard from afar. The countenances of the crowd froze as they inclined their heads and stared in the direction of the sound. Over there, 3 silhouettes could be seen flying over. These 3 people had extraordinary auras and were clad in long white robes. Upon seeing these 3, the countenances of the crowd all changed. What were the envoys of the immortal martial realm doing here? The 3 of them floated in the air, their countenances calm. One of them swept his gaze downwards, and with a wave of his hand, an ancient medallion flew out in the direction of Yi Lingshuang and the others. Qin Wentian's gaze froze. This medallion was actually flying towards him, and an instant later, it descended before him. Momentarily, the countenances of the crowd all turned to Qin Wentian, as their eyes gleamed with sharpness. The envoys of the immortal martial realm personally delivered the medallion. Chapter 550. The eyes of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness similarly gleamed with sharpness as she stared at Qin Wentian. This young man was none other than the one who rejected her request to become her disciple. Now she came here to ask for a treasure for her disciple Lu Bingyu, forcing the human emperor to agree to the immortal martial realm's medallion. Qin Wentian held the medallion in his hands as he inclined his head, staring at the white-robed emissary in the air. Every 10 years, the immortal martial realm opens. I hope you will be able to enter the immortal martial realm and obtain some good fortune. Don't miss this opportunity." The emissary nodded his head to Qin Wentian, after which, their silhouettes flickered as they directly departed, not bothering to look at anyone else. Very quickly, they vanished from the royal palace of Yi, flying towards the horizons. Below, the crown prince of the war country, Princess Luan and Li Hanyu all had strange looks on their faces as their countenances turned incredibly unsightly. Even the disciples of the battle sword sect had looks of envy on their faces as they stared at Qin Wentian. This fellow was actually so highly regarded by the emissary of the immortal martial realm, to the extent that they personally sent him a medallion to invite him. "Junior brother Qin, although this medallion doesn't have much use, it shows how highly the immortal martial realm regards you. Hence, they personally came here to send you a medallion, hoping that you won't miss this opportunity to enter the immortal martial realm." In the history of the immortal martial realm, only a total of 81 people in the entire royal sacred region managed to obtain this medallion. I didn't get one, neither did the crown prince of the war country or Princess Luan. You mustn't miss this time around. Duan Han, who was beside him, transmitted his voice to Qin Wentian. For those who are highly regarded by the immortal martial realm envoys, they would all have outstanding performances in the immortal martial realm and be ranked on the ranking monument. Qin Wentian silently nodded his head. Although he had some suspicions in his heart, he decided to ask about the immortal martial realm later. At this moment, he inclined his head and stared at the air. His foster father was the human emperor of a generation, exuding a heroic aura, yet he was forced to dig out his own bones to obtain a treasure. How tragic was that? With the medallion in his hands, Qin Wentian turned his gaze onto the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness. Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness, you took advantage of the human emperor when he was in a precarious situation, forcing the human emperor to dig out his bones to retrieve the treasure and gift it to your disciple. Sword Sovereigness, you are the Sword Sovereigness of the human emperor of the sect emperor. You can do whatever you want, no one can restrict you. Yet, your actions today caused the human emperor of the human emperor to be. You are the mountain lord of the battle sword sect. No one can restrain you for your reckless actions. Yet, your actions tarnished the reputation of the battle sword sect. Even if you wanted to seize the treasure, we wouldn't have anything to say if it was a fair and square battle. But for your actions today, as juniors, we all look down on you. Qin Wentian coldly stated, his words causing the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness to coldly laugh. Today, if I don't seize that treasure, Yi Qingyun wouldn't be able to protect it. Let alone the matters this seat does. When have you got the right to interfere? Today, this seat will not bully you. If you go to the immortal martial realm, the disciples under this seat will naturally teach you a lesson. After the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness spoke, she flicked her sleeves and brought her people away. She then spoke, Yi Qingyun, farewell. The human emperor stared at the departing silhouette of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness as he spoke. After which, he turned his gaze to the people below and spoke, farewell Yi Qingyun. The human emperor stared at the departing silhouette of the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness as he spoke. After which, he turned to the people below and spoke, everyone, please forgive me for not sending you off. These people were all from major powers in the southern domain. Today, they all believed that the human emperor would definitely die in the hands of the Qi king. Their original intention was to cause the Yi country to never recover from this setback. But who would have thought that things would change so drastically? Now that the human emperor was still alive, the other nobility of the Yi country were all willing to listen to Yi Qingyun's commands. If they wanted to destroy the Yi country, they would have to pay a heavy price. Hence, they naturally wouldn't do such a thing. Since this is the case, we will bid our farewell. Everyone stood up, smiling at Yi Qingyun as though they were good friends. Yi Qingyun merely watched on calmly. An instant later, they all departed, leaving the royal palace of the Yi country in the blink of an eye. After everyone left, Yi Qingyun groaned in misery as he coughed out a mouthful of blood. His countenance was pale white. Royal father. Human emperor. Everyone exclaimed in shock. Evidently, they had underestimated the severity of Yi Qingyun's injuries. How intense was the battle today? Even the 7 supremacies of the Violet Thunder sect appeared, and participated in the encirclement of the human emperor. Yet, the Violet Thunder sect still suffered heavy casualties and had to retreat in the end. How could the human emperor retreat unscathed? He was already heavily injured, and now that he was forced to dig out his bones for the treasure, his injuries became even more severe. If it wasn't for that, based on the personality of the human emperor, even if the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness was here, he would still choose to fight. However, he understood that if they fought again, he wouldn't be able to hold on. In addition, he was the human emperor of the Yi country. He didn't merely represent himself. If he died, the entire Yi country would be annihilated. As long as he was alive, he would be the pillar of the Yi country. Those ancient countries and clans could forget about ruining the foundations of the Yi country, even if the Yi country suffered heavy losses. Qin Wentian and Mo Qingqing's silhouettes flickered as they appeared in front of the human emperor. Mo Qingqing took out a bottle of medicinal pills and passed it to the human emperor. The human emperor smiled and directly accepted it. After which, he crushed the bottle and poured the medicinal pills into his mouth. He didn't stand on ceremony with Mo Qingqing. Qin Wentian was his foster son, and Mo Qingqing would sooner or later become his wife, just like a daughter to him. After consuming the medicinal pills, a medicinal fragrance circulated around the human emperor as his wounds rapidly healed. He closed his eyes and meditated. The others didn't disturb him. An instant later, the human emperor's body shone with a resplendent light as his injuries recovered by a large margin. When he opened his eyes again, they shone with a resplendent light, as though he had regained his vigor. The human emperor turned and stared at the nobility experts, as well as Shixian and the rest. Pass down my command. The nobility of those who participated in the rebellion today shall be sealed up. Those who were involved in the rebellion shall be killed without mercy. As for those unrelated to the rebellion, including children, women and children, they shall be spared. Allow them to leave the Yi country. Human emperor, since things have come to this, we should cut the weeds and eliminate the roots. An old man spoke as a ruthless glint flashed in his eyes. Don't worry about it. Since ancient times, the winner is the king while the losers are the vilified. I, Yi Qingyan, also trampled over countless corpses to ascend the throne. Why would I care about the revenge of those who came after me? In the future, if there's someone with the bloodline of my royal clan who can kill me openly and seize the position of the human emperor, I have nothing to say. I only hope that in the future when the royal clan of my Yi country fights for power, there's no need for me to say anything. The human emperor calmly spoke. Although he was decisive in killing, he wasn't willing to kill the children. In any case, who could guarantee that he, Yi Qingyan, would be able to live forever? Wasn't this the same as leaving a path of survival for his descendants? We obey the human emperor's command. Shixian and the rest bowed. After which, their silhouettes flickered as they carried out the human emperor's command. The human emperor then turned his gaze to the princes as he spoke. All of you have personally witnessed what happened today. I'm sure you've all been moved. Although your talents are ordinary, if your hearts and wills are resolute, so what if your cultivation speed is slower compared to others? The princes nodded their heads. The battle today had indeed moved their hearts. They were all very clear that if the human emperor was defeated today, the entire Yi country would collapse. They, their wives and children, wouldn't be able to escape this calamity. Right now, they had the protection of the human emperor, but if the human emperor wasn't here, who would be able to protect them? In the royal sacred region, there are countless ancient countries and great clans. However, the rise and fall of an ancient country is also extremely fast. It's hard to rise, but it's only a matter of time before they fall. My Yi country is an ancient country with a history of over 10,000 years. As long as one generation is weaker than the others, it would be the fate of our country's collapse. The human emperor mumbled. As he thought of this, traces of sorrow could be seen in his heart. The human emperor of an ancient country had no successor. Qin Wentian also sighed in his heart. An ancient country with a history of over 10,000 years. How could it not be coveted by others? If the human emperor didn't exist, the entire Yi country would collapse in a matter of days. This was the importance of strength at the peak. The reason why the 9 great sects were known as the 9 great sects was because they had many experts at the peak. The Battle Sword sect had 9 sword sovereigns, and the Violet Thunder sect had 7 supremacies. If the Yi country had 2 human emperors, or even more, how would the Spirit Luan country and the War country dare to step into it? Wentian, in the battle today, your battle was still the most shocking, killing a 7th level Heavenly Dipper sovereign from the Violet Thunder sect. In addition to the battles that followed, it's impossible for the Violet Thunder sect's reputation to not be tarnished. Not only that, the Plum Mountain Sword Sovereigness personally came here. Yet the envoys from the Immortal Martial Realm actually sent over an Immortal Martial Medallion. One must know that the personal disciple of that old witch, Li Hanyu, was also present, yet she didn't receive an Immortal Martial Medallion. The human emperor laughed heartily as he thought of this. Qin Wentian was the only thing that could give him some comfort in his heart. Foster father. Why would there be envoys from the Immortal Martial Realm sending over an Immortal Martial Medallion? Qin Wentian asked in bewilderment. The Immortal Martial Realm is a mystical place. The envoys are known to be omniscient. You comprehended 14 sword strikes in the Battle Sword sect, breaking the record of the Battle Sword sect, and now you even killed Yi Kongfan. How many people in the Royal Sacred Region would be able to do that? What's so strange about sending over an Immortal Martial Medallion? You don't need to think too much about this. What you should do is to prepare for the Immortal Martial Realm. Is the Immortal Martial Realm a place where anyone can enter? Qin Wentian asked. Anyone below the Celestial Phenomenon Realm can enter. However, the Immortal Martial Realm is known as the burial ground of geniuses. Although there are good fortune within, unless one is a true genius, they would die for sure. Hence, those who enter the Immortal Martial Realm all have some foundations, and the majority of them would have a cultivation base at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper or above. After all, no divine weapons are allowed inside, and if one's cultivation base is too low, it would be very easy for them to die. Since this is the case, those at the peak of Heavenly Dipper would naturally have an advantage. Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice. Right now, although he was at the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper, and could even slay 7th level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns, it would be extremely difficult for him to contend against those at the peak of Heavenly Dipper. You are wrong about this. The Immortal Martial Realm is a mystical place, and many times, talent is the most important. You will understand after you enter. For the ranking monument of the Immortal Martial Realm, those who are ranked at the top aren't those with the highest cultivation base, but rather, those with the highest talent. The human emperor explained. Duan Han walked up. Junior brother Qin, this time around, all the disciples of our Battle Sword sect are going to enter. Let's not return to the sect and head straight to the Immortal Martial Realm. I'm sure the Immortal Martial Realm would definitely be a raging storm right now. And I wonder how many geniuses from the major sects would appear. It would be a pity to miss out on such a grand event. Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with sharpness. How vast was the Royal Sacred Region? There were ancient countries, great sects, and even ancient aristocratic clans and sections. There were countless geniuses there, and the opening of the Immortal Martial Realm was a grand event in the Royal Sacred Region. How could he miss it? He had to see for himself how glorious the geniuses of the Royal Sacred Region were. Chapter 551. In the ancient country of Yi, Yi Lingshuang and Qin Wentian accompanied the human emperor for a few more days until his injuries recovered. After that, Qin Wentian and the rest prepared to set off. Although there was still a period of time before the Immortal Martial Realm opened, heading to the Immortal Martial City in advance to take a look at the various geniuses of the Royal Sacred Region was something that everyone was filled with anticipation. In the royal palace, the human emperor stared at the group of young men before him. At this moment, the tyrannical and imposing aura he exuded during battle had already been retracted. He was now just like a gentle elder. Looking at all of you makes me think of myself in the past. The vicissitudes of time, 100 years have passed in the blink of an eye. Now that all of you are in your prime, don't waste your time. Who hasn't been young and arrogant? Sadly, I don't have the chance to redo things, or I would definitely be even crazier than I was back then. The human emperor laughed. Qin Wentian and the rest all had smiles on their faces. Foster father, you are still as glorious as ever. I'm sure everyone in the world has heard of that battle, executing the traitor's nobility and slaughtering the experts from the Violet Thunder sect. How glorious! You are even crazier compared to us. Qin Wentian laughed. I'm getting old. The human emperor smiled as he shook his head. Wentian, do you really not want to consider it? Those under Shixian's tutelage all have extraordinary strength. If you are willing, I can give you some loyal guards. Foster father, right now I'm roaming the outside world. Why would I need guards? If in the future when I need manpower, I can always borrow some from foster father. Qin Wentian laughed. Maybe one day when he returns to Grand Xia, he would need the strength of the human emperor's subordinates to sweep through the various transcendent powers of Grand Xia. Naturally, he wasn't in a hurry now. If he didn't have enough strength, what did it matter if he borrowed the strength of the human emperor? He had to first step into the celestial phenomenon realm before overturning Grand Xia. Since you put it this way, in the future when you are roaming the outside world, bring Qingqing and Lingshuang back to visit me when you are free. This Yi country is your home. The human emperor spoke again. He and Qin Wentian were kindred spirits and had accepted Qin Wentian as his foster son. Both of them had no greed in their hearts, and if Qin Wentian was willing, he wouldn't mind handing over the Yi country to Qin Wentian. But since Qin Wentian said that his ambitions weren't here, the human emperor wouldn't force him. Of course I won't be courteous with you, foster father, Qin Wentian said readily. Foster father, after we part ways today, let's have a drink and talk again another day. In the future when you marry Qingqing, you have to send an invitation to Yi. If not, don't blame me for not recognizing you as my godson. How could that be? I still have to ask foster father to preside over my wedding. Upon seeing the human emperor pretending to be angry, Qin Wentian laughed. If he was going to marry Qingqing, how could he not invite the human emperor? Haha, don't lie to me. The human emperor laughed uproariously. After which, he turned his head to Shixian and commanded, "You guys protect Wentian, Lingshuang and the others as they head to the immortal martial city. You guys have to protect them until they exit." Yes. Shixian bowed. Qin Wentian and the others didn't reject. This trip to the immortal martial realm would be like a raging storm. It was unknown how many people from the major powers would be there. Those princes and princesses of ancient countries, heaven chosen from the major clans, saint children and holy maidens from the ancient sects. All of them had extremely high statuses. They wouldn't care about the ordinary disciples of the battle sword sect. There was another very important point. When they entered the immortal martial realm and contended against the heaven chosen of the heavenly martial realm, their hands would definitely be stained with the blood of disciples from the major powers. Every time they exited the immortal martial realm, there would always be a huge battle. Okay, let's move out. The human emperor Yi Qingyun stood with his hands clasped behind his back, his black hair fluttering in the wind. The others bowed to the human emperor before their silhouettes flickered as they soared up into the air, riding on an ancient void sail. This was a type of divine weapon that allowed one to travel at an extremely fast speed. Everyone stood on the sail as they soared up into the clouds. Sunlight cascaded downwards. Qin Wentian turned his head back and glanced at the majestic ancient palace. The human emperor Yi Qingyun still had a smile on his face as he sent them off. Staring at the human emperor as well as the ancient palace, Qin Wentian's heart was filled with emotions. This trip to Yi had caused him to be moved, and it had also strengthened his conviction to pursue the path of cultivation. Even now, the scene of the battle with the human emperor was still vivid in his mind. This was a world of martial arts, a world of the strong. The victor was king and the loser was vilified. The human emperor had never offended anyone before, but as the human emperor of an ancient country, his authority towered up into the heavens, and he even had treasures in his possession. All of these became the reason why he was coveted by others. Even with the human emperor's overwhelming combat prowess, he was still forced to such a state. If it wasn't for the fact that the poison in his body had been cured, the fate of the human emperor's bloodline could very well be imagined. Shifting his gaze over, Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared at the blazing sun hanging high up in the sky. His eyes gleamed with an incomparably resolute conviction. The immortal martial realm was located in the northwest region of the Royal Sacred Region. The immortal martial realm would only open once every 10 years, and it had already existed for tens of thousands of years. As time passed, outside of the once desolate immortal martial realm, a majestic city rose up from the ground. This was none other than the immortal martial city of today. Now this immortal martial city had already become an ancient city, exuding an aura of vicissitudes, yet it didn't lose its majestic grandeur. It was said that this ancient immortal martial city had witnessed the rise and fall of the characters of the Royal Sacred Region. Although this was an exaggeration, wasn't it the truth? For those heaven-shaking characters of the Royal Sacred Sect, many of them had once left their footprints in this ancient immortal martial city, entering the immortal martial realm before. And now the 10-year deadline had arrived. This ancient immortal martial city once again welcomed countless experts. The entire city was filled with people, completely different from the tranquility of normal days. In the airspace above the ancient city, demonic beasts roamed freely, and there were even several rarely seen greater demons that exuded a baleful aura that towered up into the sky. There were even some greater demons that were merely mounts. On the ancient pathway leading to the immortal martial city, in the air, there was an endless stream of people. And at this moment, in a certain location in the air, a thunderous rumbling sound echoed out as a terrifying aura permeated the air, shocking countless silhouettes. They inclined their heads and stared up in the air, only to see a group of experts riding on demonic beasts, exuding an unfathomable aura. In the center of these humans and demonic beasts, there was a terrifying greater demon that exuded a baleful aura. It had a pair of blood-colored eyes, and just a single glance at it would cause the hearts of people to tremble. This greater demon's body was gigantic, and its entire body was pitch black. However, a resplendent light could be seen reflecting off its body, causing people to feel a sense of danger. Its claws were so sharp that they could easily tear apart mountains. Blood-eyed demonic wolf. The hearts of the crowd trembled as they recalled a type of demonic beast. This demonic beast resembled a wolf, but its size was even more terrifying compared to a tiger or leopard. It was filled with power, and exuded the aura of a king. This blood-eyed demonic wolf was pulling a carriage in the air, and it was unknown what sort of character was seated within. That's someone from the Supreme Demon Sect of the Western Domain. It's rumored that the Saint Child of the Supreme Demon Sect has unparalleled talent, able to make all demonic beasts submit to him. His talent in beast taming is extraordinary, and he's one of the strongest contenders to become the next sect leader of the Supreme Demon Sect. It's said that the Saint Child of the Supreme Demon Sect is also about to enter the immortal martial realm. Seems like he has arrived. A voice drifted out, causing the hearts of the crowd to shiver. The Supreme Demon Sect of the Western Domain was an extremely dangerous ancient sect. Their strength was extremely terrifying, and no one dared to antagonize them. 10 miles away, in the air, a group of terrifying silhouettes could be seen. They were all clad in golden armor and wielded golden long spears in their hands, exuding a resplendent light. Everywhere they passed by, people would have to stare up at them. These people were none other than experts from the radiant gold ancient country of the Royal Sacred Region. They were proficient in combat and had terrifying combat prowess. And in another place, in the clouds, 9 flood dragons could be seen soaring through the skies, pulling a war chariot. Everywhere they passed by, there was no one who didn't retreat in fear. Wherever the gazes of the figures on the war chariot passed by, no one dared to match their gaze. These people were from one of the hegemonic powers of the Royal Sacred Region, the Devil Dragon Island. Other than this, there were also many other terrifying powers that had already arrived or were currently on their way here. The 9 great sects that belonged to the Royal Sacred Sect all sent people here, and they came in different batches. For example, Qin Wentian and those from the Battle Sword Sect, as well as those from the other Battle Sword sects, would definitely be here as well. Any major power would have countless disciples, and the sect wouldn't force you to enter the immortal martial realm. Everyone had to go willingly. For example, those from the Supreme Demon Sect and Radiant Gold Ancient Country, It was only because of the appearance of important characters, such as the saint child of the supreme demon sect, and the crown prince of radiant gold ancient country. At this moment, in an elegant inn in the immortal martial city, Qin Wentian and his group were seated by the window. Qin Wentian, Yi Lingshuang, Mo Qingcheng, Xiao Yu and a few other beauties from the Medicine Sovereign Valley were all seated together, while the others were seated at separate tables. His gaze would occasionally turn to the skies. Qin Wentian's eyes were filled with a faint smile. It had already been 3 days since they arrived in the immortal martial city. They stayed in an inn nearby and would occasionally stroll around the city. When they were tired, they would eat some snacks in the inn, living a carefree life. However, every time Qin Wentian saw the shocking scene in the air, great waves would appear in his heart. Not too long in the future, he would have to contend with these people for supremacy in the immortal martial realm. As the saying goes, beauties are a feast for the eyes. Junior brother Qin really knows how to enjoy life. At this moment, a voice drifted over from a table beside them. So it turned out that Lu Yin was filled with envy and jealousy when he saw Qin Wentian sitting at the same table with so many beauties. Sometimes he also wanted to join in the fun, but Yi Lingshuang's and Xiao Yu's gazes were sufficient to force him to retreat. Nowadays beauties are as common as the clouds in the immortal martial city. Even in an inn, beauties can be seen passing by at any time. How could senior brother Lu Yin be lonely? Qin Wentian laughed. Not long ago, there was a group of valiant beauties passing by the inn. That fellow Lu Yin whistled, attracting many murderous gazes. If it wasn't for the fact that the immortal martial city was filled with experts, making it so that no one dared to cause trouble, those beauties would have already acted against Lu Yin. Speaking of beauties, I have no choice but to mention the Celestial Maiden sect. I heard that the #1 beauty in the royal sacred region, the Celestial Maiden sect, has already arrived in the immortal martial city. Junior brother Qin, should we go and take a look? A bright light flashed in Lu Yun's eyes as he spoke of the Celestial Maiden sect. What Celestial Maiden sect? They are clearly a bunch of devilish girls. Also, who doesn't know that Lin Xian has the ability to cause chaos and bewitch the hearts of men? Who knows how many people have fallen under her skirt? If you want to become the plaything of that demoness, just do it yourself. Why must you drag Wentian into this? Yi Lingshuang furrowed her brows, as though she was extremely fearful of this Celestial Maiden sect. Haha, don't I want to test junior brother Qin? Lin Xian from the Celestial Maiden sect dares to claim that she's the #1 beauty in the world, but how could the beauty of the Holy Maiden lose out to her? Lu Yin laughed. Although Qingqing's beauty is definitely not inferior to that demoness, don't you know that demoness is most proficient in bewitching the hearts of men? How many geniuses in the royal sacred region have already fallen head over heels for her? Yet you still want to get close to her? Don't think I don't know that Lin Xian spread the news that anyone with the immortal martial realm medallion would be able to become her guest. Are you trying to make use of junior brother Qin? Yi Lingshuang glared at Lu Yin as she spoke. Qin Wentian couldn't help but feel curious when he saw the wariness in Yi Lingshuang's eyes. This Lin Xian from the Celestial Maiden sect actually had such charm that even a beauty like Yi Lingshuang was so fearful of her. Chapter 552. Mo Qingqing sat beside Qin Wentian. When she saw Qin Wentian's flickering eyes, she couldn't help but have a smile on her face as she lightly nudged Qin Wentian's arm. Upon seeing Qin Wentian looking at her, Mo Qingqing's lips twitched. Do you want to see the #1 beauty under the heavens? Qin Wentian blinked when he saw the look in Mo Qingqing's eyes. He did indeed have such thoughts, but he didn't have any special intentions. He only wanted to see what sort of character this #1 beauty under the heavens was exactly. Seeing that Qin Wentian didn't reply, Mo Qingqing's dainty hands stealthily moved to Qin Wentian's thigh and pinched it harshly, causing Qin Wentian to have a bitter smile on his face. Women were truly born to be jealous, but one couldn't help but to say that when a beauty like Mo Qingqing was jealous, her expression was extremely beautiful. Even Yi Lingshuang was stunned when she saw that. After which, she turned to Qin Wentian with a smile that was not a smile on her face. Since Wentian wants to go, just go with Lu Yin. I will accompany Qingqing here to wait for you guys. Yi Lingshuang's lips twitched, her words causing Qin Wentian to have a bitter smile on his face. Sister Ling Shuang, don't hit me when I'm down. The beauties beside them all laughed. Lu Yun stared at the beautiful scenery in front of him, as his eyes widened in envy and jealousy towards Qin Wentian. Right now, the female cultivators from the Medicine Sovereign Valley had a much better impression of Qin Wentian compared to before. In Yi, Qin Wentian's actions had caused the Qi King Manor to explode in anger for the sake of a beauty, and after that, he killed Yi Kongfan in a domineering manner. This matter had already shaken the entire royal capital of Yi, washing away the humiliation Mo Qingqing had suffered. Yi Kongfan's slander had long been discredited, and the things Qin Wentian had done for Mo Qingqing had become a topic of conversation, with many people talking about it. In addition to that shocking battle in the royal palace of the Yi country, the fame and prestige of the human emperor, Yi Qingyun, was like the sun in the sky. Not only that, Qin Wentian, the foster son of the human emperor, was also extremely famous in the Yi country. The people from the Medicine Sovereign Valley were all aware of this, and gradually, they no longer had any thoughts of resisting Qin Wentian. In addition, the relationship between the two of them was already as inseparable as glue. Most probably they were already husband and wife, and there was no way to change it. Sister Ling Shuang, it's not like you don't know that he's used to being a playboy. There's never been a lack of beauties by his side. I know that there's a Qing. Isn't she also a peerless beauty? After Mo Qingqing and Qin Wentian met, her mood gradually became more cheerful, as though she had returned to the past. Naturally, this was only in front of those close to her. Qingqing, you know about it? Yi Lingshuang's beautiful eyes flickered. She had met Qing before. That aura of a snow lotus on an icy mountain was indeed breathtakingly beautiful. Cough cough. Qin Wentian felt extremely depressed in his heart. Wasn't this Yi Lingshuang too naive? And indeed, Mo Qingqing had a smile that was not a smile on her face as she stared at Qin Wentian, causing Qin Wentian to have a bitter smile on his face. Qingqing, I've already been honest with you. Several sharp gazes shot over. Qin Wentian inclined his head, and saw that the countenances of the maidens from the Medicine Sovereign Valley were all unkind. This bastard already had a woman like the Holy Maiden as his wife, yet he still had beauties accompanying him outside? Humph. Mo Qingqing snorted arrogantly. Qin Wentian felt that he couldn't sit here any longer. These maidens were too powerful, and not only that, he and Qing were both innocent and innocent. Sister Ling Shuang, let's return to the inn and accompany them to see the number one beauty under the heavens. Mo Qingqing spoke to Yi Lingshuang. After which, the group of maidens actually stood up and departed. However, Mo Qingqing turned her head back and glanced at Qin Wentian as a soul-stirring smile appeared on her face. She reminded, "Be careful when you are outside. Don't lose your soul to the seduction of beauties." After speaking, she left with Yi Lingshuang and the others. Staring at the back view of Mo Qingqing, Qin Wentian felt warmth in his heart. He knew that this lass wasn't angry, and was only intentionally teasing him. Upon thinking of this, Qin Wentian ruthlessly spat in his heart. "Just wait and see how I'll deal with you when we return." Qin Wentian involuntarily had a complacent expression on his face. "Junior brother Qin, why are you smiling so shamelessly? What are you thinking about?" Lu Yun's voice drifted over, his words causing Qin Wentian to glare at him. "The Holy Maiden is truly considerate, to actually allow you to see the number one beauty under the heavens. I wonder when would I have such a fated marriage with her." Lu Yun sighed. "Alright, you guys stop arguing. Let's set off now." Duan Han interrupted the two of them, causing Qin Wentian and Lu Yun to turn their gazes onto him as they asked, "Where to?" Naturally, to see the number one beauty under the heavens. This can also be considered a type of tempering. Duan Han started before replying. Qin Wentian, Lu Yun and the rest all blinked their eyes. After which, they only saw Duan Han waving his hands as his silhouette flickered, revealing a faint smile on his face. Yes, tempering, tempering. The various fellow apprentices exchanged glances before they all laughed uproariously. So it turned out that senior brother Duan Han was the one who had concealed his strength. The Immortal Ripple Pavilion was surrounded by ancient buildings, and there were many young talents gathered here. The melody of a zither rang out in this space. It was truly incomparably beautiful. This zither melody could seep into one's heart, leaving behind a deep imprint in it. On top of the immortal ripple pavilion, several masked maidens stood there, guarding it, not allowing anyone to get close. From afar, a group of silhouettes could be seen walking over. These people were none other than Qin Wentian and the others from the Battle Sword sect. Their footsteps were slow, as though they were all intoxicated by the zither melody. Lin Xian is proficient in music, and her zither melody is capable of seducing the souls of others. Initially, I thought it would be a song of seduction, but who would have thought that her zither melody was so elegant, without a hint of obscenity? It seems like I've underestimated the number one beauty under the heavens. Qin Wentian silently mused. On the way here, he had heard his fellow apprentices talking about the Celestial Maiden sect. The Celestial Maiden sect was a great sect of the eastern regions, and they only accepted female disciples. Not only that, they prioritized beauty before talent in martial arts. Hence, the members of the Celestial Maiden sect were all naturally born beauties. The current sect leader of the Celestial Maiden sect had caused a huge commotion in the Royal Sacred Region 100 years ago. It was unknown how many heroes of the Royal Sacred Region had interacted with her before, leaving behind many rumors. For example, Nangong Zhu from the Nangong aristocrat clan of the eastern regions. His talent was outstanding, and he was chosen to be the next clan leader of the Nangong aristocrat clan. He was adored by countless outstanding females, and there were many who were willing to marry him. However, back then he actually forsook everything for the sake of the sect leader of the Celestial Maiden sect. This matter caused a huge commotion in the eastern regions. The Nangong aristocrat clan didn't even hesitate to wage war against the Celestial Maiden sect, resulting in heavy casualties. However, Nangong Zhu was willing to stand on the side of the Celestial Maiden sect against the Nangong aristocrat clan. However, even until now, there was no news of the sect leader of the Celestial Maiden sect marrying anyone. There were people who said that the fairies of the Celestial Maiden sect were all demonic women, using their beauty to seduce the souls of men. There were also people who said that although the reputation of the fairies of the Celestial Maiden sect wasn't bad, they all kept their chastity as pure as jade. Although there were many rumors of them having affairs with outstanding characters, no one had ever confirmed that they had actually obtained their virginity. The current Celestial Maiden Lin Xian, of the Celestial Maiden sect, didn't lose out in the slightest when compared to the sect leader of the Celestial Maiden sect in the past. In fact, she even seemed to have the potential to surpass the sect leader of the Celestial Maiden sect, and was known as the number one beauty under the heavens. Now that she had started to roam the Royal Sacred Region, it was unknown how great of a commotion she would cause. Qin Wentian slowly walked forward. The sound of the zither permeated into the hearts of the spectators, containing a mysterious charm that could evoke the worries in their hearts, causing them to feel a faint sense of sorrow. It was so natural and silent. I've only heard the sound of the zither, and although I've never met her before, I feel as though I know her, pulling the distance between us closer, as though we've known each other for a long time. Such a method is truly astonishing, Duan Han murmured, his words resonating with the hearts of the spectators. There's actually a faint fragrance permeating the air. Unknowingly, it's so natural and so refreshing, causing one's heart to itch uncontrollably, wanting to meet her once more. Lu Yin drew in a deep breath as an intoxicated expression appeared on his face. Qin Wentian also smelled this fragrance. It was simple and elegant, so natural that it blended into the air, causing one to feel intoxicated. What floral fragrance is this? Qin Wentian couldn't help but to ask. The fragrance of a woman. Lu Yin replied, Lin Xian has an astral soul that's a plant type. This fragrance originated from her astral soul, and it has the ability to intoxicate and bewitch people. Junior brother Qin, you have to be careful. As he spoke, Qin Wentian and the other silhouettes flickered, appearing in the airspace above an ancient building as they cast their gazes in the direction of the Immortal Ripple Pavilion. On the roofs of the ancient buildings around the Immortal Ripple Pavilion, the silhouettes of several youths could be seen. These people all had extraordinary demeanors, quietly standing there, yet none of them didn't give off an extraordinary feeling. Evidently, They were all outstanding characters, and without exception, their gazes were all fixed on the ancient pavilion in front of them. Above the immortal ripple pavilion, there was a layer of curtains that obstructed the vision of the spectators. The sound of the zither originated from behind the curtains, and when one peered through the curtains, they could see a peerlessly beautiful silhouette sitting there, playing the zither. Her graceful fingers danced across the strings of the zither, and each of her movements seemed to be able to tug at the hearts of the spectators. Just by looking at that blurry silhouette, one could already feel how alluring this woman was. In this silent space, there were no sounds of chatter. When the song ended, the hearts of the spectators were filled with a sense of disappointment and frustration. Someone let out a long sigh as he sighed. Fairy's music is exquisite, enough to cause the hearts of men to fall in love. The Eye King praises me too much. A voice drifted over, soft and silky, yet melodious and pleasing to the ears. It was as though even the voice of this woman was perfect and flawless, exuding a sense of allure. Since we're already here, why don't Fairy show herself? Don't disappoint us. Shang Tong spoke again. So it turned out that this person was none other than the prince of Grand Shang Empire that Qin Wentian had met before in the Xian King city. Right now he didn't exude any arrogance at all, and was amiable and approachable. His demeanor was completely different from the person he met before. Just because the person he was facing was different, his attitude and demeanor would naturally change. That's only natural. A melodious voice rang out. After which, the curtains of the curtains were lifted by the wind, flying to the two sides. After which, a silhouette appeared before the eyes of the spectators. That silhouette slowly inclined her head, and with just a single glance, it caused the hearts of the spectators to tremble. Qin Wentian's heart also trembled violently, after which he bit his lips lightly as cold sweat appeared on his back. Lin Xian's beautiful eyes stared off into the distance. Her flawless countenance was flawless, yet such a woman actually gave off a feeling of fragility and softness. She was so pitiful that people couldn't help but feel a sense of tenderness towards her, wanting to protect her from any harm. However, Lin Xian was the future sect leader of the Celestial Maiden sect. How could she possibly be weak? Such allure was actually so stealthy and silent, entering the hearts of the spectators. How could the spectators not be terrified? Femme fatale, able to bring calamity to empires and bring calamity to the people. Chapter 553. Within the immortal ripple pavilion, a gentle breeze gusted by, fluttering the long hair of that delicate maiden. Lin Xian was different from what Qin Wentian had imagined. Before coming here, he had heard the evaluation of the Celestial Maiden sect. Qin Wentian had thought that this was a woman proficient in the arts of charm, possessing a pair of mesmerizing eyes that could mesmerize the hearts of men. But the truth was completely different from what Qin Wentian had imagined. Lin Xian's zither music was so elegant and clear, akin to a trickling stream, able to enter the hearts of men. She was extremely charming without the slightest bit of seductiveness. Her eyes were so pure and clear. It was as though one could see the toughness and fragility in the depths of her heart. This was the first time Qin Wentian had seen such a woman. She was different from all the other women in the world. In her eyes, within her fragility, there was an unwavering determination. Not only Qin Wentian, the gazes of the others all trembled. Evidently they too felt an intense contrast in their hearts. Among them, there were many geniuses with esteemed statuses. They came here with arrogance in their hearts, not because they wanted to subdue Lin Xian, but because they wanted to see what capabilities this maiden from the Celestial Maiden sect had to be able to mesmerize the geniuses. They all believed that their wills were extremely firm. How could they be seduced by the charm of a mere beauty? Hence, these geniuses all came here with a mocking attitude. They wanted to see how this maiden would mesmerize them. The ending was undoubtedly their loss. From the start till the end, Lin Xian had never revealed any intentions of bewitching them. Even in that fragility, there was still a hint of pride. Drawing in a deep breath, these geniuses all felt ashamed in their hearts. Didn't Qin Wentian also have the same thoughts as the others? But the more he did so, the more shocked he was in his heart. Just a single glance from this maiden was enough to cause such emotions to appear in their hearts. Everyone has come from afar. Xian pays her respects. Lin Xian smiled. Her smile was as pure and peaceful as ever, causing people to feel a sense of loneliness. It was as though she was born this way. Fairy, you've really broadened my horizons. Just having a glance at you makes this trip worth it. Shang Tong sighed with emotion. Admiration came from the bottom of his heart, and his tone carried a trace of apology. Lin Xian, you are truly powerful. The moment you appeared, you caused all these geniuses to be speechless. A voice drifted over from afar. After which, a terrifying demonic chi permeated the air. In that direction, a terrifying blood-eyed demonic wolf could be seen pulling a carriage in the air, whistling through the air. An instant later it appeared in this space. With a loud bang, the carriage was torn into pieces. An incomparably demonic and domineering young man walked out, walking on the back of the blood-eyed demonic wolf, looking extremely graceful. The Supreme Demon Realm's Saint. Everyone glanced at the young man, and their hearts trembled. The Saint of the Supreme Demon Realm was an extremely powerful figure. However, Lin Xian merely casually glanced at him as she slowly spoke. Since the geniuses gathered here today, I'm sure many of you are here to see Xian make a fool of herself. Since this is the case, I'll play a tune for you all. I hope you will kindly accept it. As the sound of her voice faded, Lin Xian's aura abruptly changed. Exuding a sense of arrogance, her 10 fingers lightly stroked the zither as she spoke again. For those who have no business here, please leave quickly, lest Xian accidentally injure you. Fairy, what an arrogant tone. Another figure spoke out. The gazes of the crowd turned to the top of a building in the north. Over there, a figure clad in green stood there, his long hair fluttering in the wind, exuding an incomparably carefree aura. Evidently, this was an extraordinary character, and was definitely a heaven chosen from one of the major sects in the royal sacred region. Today, Xian wants to see which of the geniuses here can rank higher in the immortal martial realm. Lin Xian faintly spoke. After which, the melody of her zither abruptly rang out. Streams of light flowed from Lin Xian's 10 fingers, extending outwards. At the instant the melody of her zither rang out, the entire space abruptly turned silent, as though they had fallen into a state of immersion. Silence, tranquility, bringing everyone into a state of emptiness. Qin Wentian quietly listened, and very swiftly, an illusion appeared in his mind. In this entire space, only he and Lin Xian remained. Lin Xian sat there, playing her zither, while he sat opposite her, listening to the melody. In this entire space, there were only the two of them. Illusionary realm. Qin Wentian's heart was as clear as a mirror. The melody of the zither had actually brought him into an illusionary realm, yet he didn't intentionally try to break free from it. From Lin Xian's words, it seemed that she wanted to contend against the others. Since that was the case, he wanted to see what methods Lin Xian had. The melody of the zither was so graceful and moving. Qin Wentian accompanied her just like that, listening to her melody as he sunk deep into it. After a long time, they helped each other in times of hardship, sharing each other's hearts. Such feelings were pure and simple, without any impurities at all. The melody of the zither had completely brought him into a world of tranquility, abandoning all the worries and conflicts in the world. With only a beautiful woman playing the zither, this kind of spiritual liberation was so relaxing and wondrous. Qin Wentian felt as though he had accompanied Lin Xian for a very long time. The two of them didn't speak, yet it was as though they already knew each other. Just a single melody of the zither was able to bring him into such a state. Sir, you can speak to me. I can hear your inner thoughts. Lin Xian inclined her head and stared at Qin Wentian as she smiled. Her words caused Qin Wentian's heart to violently tremble as he stared at her face. Fairy, what a powerful illusionary realm. It was as though Qin Wentian had really spoken in the illusionary realm. His heart trembled even more. Back then when he was in the royal tomb of Grand Xia, he couldn't differentiate between reality and illusion. But now this illusionary realm actually had the same feeling as he did back then. From this, one could see how powerful this illusionary realm was. However, it's not difficult for Sir to break free. Lin Xian'er smiled. I've yet to ask for Sir's name. Qin Wentian. So it's Sir Qin who broke the record of the battle sword sect. Sir Qin has a holy maiden as your wife. No wonder you don't have the slightest bit of affection for Xian'er. Also, your will is so resolute. You must have experienced similar illusionary realms before, right? Lin Xian'er continued. It was as though she could see through Qin Wentian. I've experienced a dream before, and it can only be stronger and not weaker compared to Fairy's illusionary realm. Qin Wentian didn't hide anything. So this is the case. Sir Qin has never been famous in the royal sacred region before. Yet you suddenly rose up and even obtained the heart of the holy maiden. You must have come from a faraway land, and to be able to reach this step, you must have experienced countless hardships. No wonder your will is so resolute. How can you be compared to those geniuses from the major powers? Lin Xian'er's voice was sincere, as though she regretted not meeting him earlier. Fairy praises me too much. There are countless geniuses from the major powers in the royal sacred region. Although I, Qin Wentian, wouldn't look down on the heroes of the world. For example, Fairy has truly broadened my horizons. Qin Wentian sincerely replied. Among these geniuses, Xian'er and Sir Qin hit it off quite well. It's just that if there's a day when we have no choice but to face each other, how can I bear to do so? As the sound of Lin Xian'er's voice faded, the melody suddenly changed. The tranquil melody vanished completely, replaced by a faint killing intent. It was as though a close friend had turned into an enemy, and had no choice but to face each other with weapons, filled with helplessness. Fairy's words are actually so confident. Are you certain that you can defeat me? Qin Wentian spoke. Lin Xian'er actually said that she couldn't bear to act against him. Such arrogance didn't seem to be something that would come out from the mouth of that weak and delicate maiden. Lin Xian'er didn't reply. The melody of the zither grew more and more urgent, akin to a raging tempest. The armored horses galloped forward, and the entire space was suddenly enveloped by a desolate killing intent. Qin Wentian only felt that the entire space was filled with killing intent. That weak and delicate maiden was still lowering her head, and playing a melody of desolation. Sir, be careful. Lin Xian'er faintly spoke. Instantly, within the melody of her zither, numerous terrifying blades of killing intent erupted forth, soundless and as fast as lightning, stabbing towards Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian's aura erupted forth as his demeanor changed. Lifting his palms, he blasted out a draconic imprint. Instantly, the draconic roars echoed out, blasting away the sharp blades. At the same time, Qin Wentian stepped out as sword chi gushed forth. A terrifying sword might permeated the entire space as he stepped towards Lin Xian'er. He was also an extremely decisive person. Since Lin Xian'er wanted to probe him, he would directly act. Every step he took caused sword chi to surge up the skies. However, Lin Xian'er's zither melody grew more and more urgent, blotting out the skies and covering the earth. Qin Wentian felt as though he was being enveloped by a mysterious energy, as a feeling of extreme agony flooded his entire body. However, his gaze was incomparably resolute, and every step he took brought forth a towering sword might. Lin Xian'er stood up. Her silhouette flickered as her opponent's body actually split into two. In the blink of an eye, the surroundings were filled with Lin Xian'er's silhouettes. Each and every one of them was playing the zither, causing Qin Wentian to feel his will becoming chaotic, as though he was about to fall into a trap. How powerful! The blood in Qin Wentian's body seethed as a vertical pupil appeared in the center of his brows. Stretching out his palms, a blood-colored ancient halberd materialized, exuding a towering blood might. Bang! Sword chi gushed forth, transforming into raging waves. Boundless sword might descended from the heavens, slashing towards Lin Xian'er's silhouettes. Bzz. Lin Xian'er's silhouettes waved their palms at the same time. On the surface of the zither, numerous needle-like beams of killing light shot towards Qin Wentian, as though he had nowhere to hide. Die. Qin Wentian unleashed the Seven Annihilations swordplay to the extreme. As he stomped down, sword melody ravaged the air. Lin Xian'er's body felt as though it was about to be torn apart. But at this moment, a silhouette appeared in the air. Qin Wentian seemed to have grown eyes on the top of his head. Stepping out, the blood-colored ancient halberd slashed out in rage. In that instant, the ancient halberd moved soundlessly, as fast as lightning. Lin Xian'er's body was directly penetrated by the halberd. But at the same instant, a terrifying sense of danger bore down on her. Behind Qin Wentian, a palm directly slammed down. Astral light erupted, stellar transposition. Qin Wentian's silhouette directly vanished, transforming into a series of afterimages as he sped forward. The ancient halberd in his hands stabbed out with an indomitable will. The location he was attacking was none other than the location where Lin Xian'er was playing her zither. However, at this moment, there was no one there. Behind Qin Wentian, Lin Xian'er's silhouette stood there. An expression of astonishment appeared on her face as her beautiful eyes gleamed with sharpness. Abruptly, a fluctuation of energy appeared in that empty location. After which Lin Xian'er's silhouette appeared once more, rapidly retreating. She appeared, but the ancient halberd seemed to have vanished. A light sound rang out, and Lin Xian'er, who was behind her, had an expression of shock on her face. After which she directly transformed into thin air. And in front of him, where Lin Xian'er's heart was, a blood-colored ancient halberd could be seen. Lin Xian'er, who was pierced by the halberd, inclined her head and stared at Qin Wentian. After which she smiled. "Sir Qin, how did you discover it?" "Fairies' illusions are too shocking." Qin Wentian sighed, but he didn't reply. How powerful was his perception? Back then when he was at Yuanfu, he could already see through the Luo River. But today, he was almost fooled by Lin Xian'er. At the instant Lin Xian'er stood up, she was already using his eyes to deceive his perception. "But I still lost." Lin Xian'er laughed. Abruptly, everything vanished. Qin Wentian discovered that he was still standing at his original location, while Lin Xian'er was still sitting on the immortal Ripple Pavilion. It was as though everything that happened earlier was nothing but a dream. Not only Qin Wentian, everyone else also awoke from their illusions. Their hearts were incomparably shaken, and some of the heavens chosen even had blood seeping out of their mouths, their countenances pale. The disciples of the battle sword sect beside Qin Wentian all had pale countenances, as expressions of shame could be seen in their eyes. This made Qin Wentian understand that earlier, Lin Xian'er had actually fought against all the heavens chosen. Victory and defeat have yet to be determined. Why did Fairy withdraw? The saint child of the supreme demon sect's aura gushed forth, as though he hadn't had his fill of battles. Xian'er has already been defeated once. Lin Xian'er slowly spoke, after which her gaze landed on Qin Wentian. The judgment of the envoys from the immortal martial realm is truly sharp. Among all the heavens chosen here, Sir Qin is the number one. Chapter 554. As the sound of Lin Xian'er's voice faded, numerous incomparably sharp gazes instantly turned towards Qin Wentian as a terrifying pressure bore down on him. In the surroundings, there were over 10 geniuses gathered here. All of their hearts were higher than the heavens, and when they heard that the number one beauty under the heavens, Lin Xian'er, was in the immortal Ripple Pavilion, they naturally wanted to see for themselves what sort of woman she was, daring to cause so much trouble for the geniuses here. Lin Xian'er left a deep impression in their hearts. Earlier in the Illusionscape battle, it was as though their cultivation bases were the same. Quite a few geniuses were defeated by Lin Xian'er, causing their hearts to be filled with shock. Initially, they thought that Lin Xian'er would be a weak and frail woman who only relied on her charm to seduce men. Who would have thought that she was actually so outstanding, swiftly leaving behind an indelible impression in their hearts. But right now Lin Xian'er's words undoubtedly caused everyone to lose all faith. Out of all the geniuses here, Sir Qin was undoubtedly the number one. Who was this Sir Qin? He actually dared to proclaim himself to be number one among them? I've never heard of any heavenly dipper sovereigns surnamed Qin before. Who is this Sir Qin that Fairy Lin is talking about? The saint child of the supreme demon sect swept his gaze over to Qin Wentian, his demonic chi cold, and filled with a biting cold battle intent. After which he turned his gaze back to Lin Xian'er, wanting to see if her words were true or false. Earlier in the Illusionscape battle he didn't manage to obtain victory. His opponent's illusionary arts were extremely terrifying, and it was as though there was no end to the number of clones he could kill. Within the Battle Sword sect, comprehending the 14 sword strikes. In the royal palace of Yi, enraged because of a beauty, other than Sir Qin who jumped levels to kill Yi Kongfan, who else could it be? Lin Xian smiled as she turned her gaze over to Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian was initially somewhat unhappy. After all, a single sentence from Lin Xian had pushed him to the heart of the storm. However, Lin Xian's eyes were filled with sincerity, without the slightest bit of hypocrisy. It was as though her words were spoken from the depths of her heart. In addition to that beautiful countenance of hers that could bring calamity to the masses, it was truly impossible for anyone to feel hatred towards her. What kind of genius is Yi Kongfan from Yi? Killing him can actually be considered a battle achievement? The saint child of the supreme demon sect spoke in arrogance. He didn't even glance at Qin Wentian as he coldly stated, "The number 1 ranker fairy spoke of, killing him is as easy as flipping my palms. Saint child, your cultivation base is the same as Yi Kongfan, both at the peak of the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper. If you are 2 levels lower, I wonder if you would still dare to boast so shamelessly." An expression of disappointment appeared on Lin Xian's face when she heard the arrogant words of the saint child of the supreme demon sect. She faintly replied, "My so-called number 1 ranking is only based on my talent, not combat prowess." Of Lin Xian's words, Lin Xian of anger of disappointment, of Qin of. Saint child, if you want to twist words and force logic, Xian has nothing to say. Among the geniuses who entered the immortal martial realm this time around, I'm afraid the saint child can't even be considered a heaven's chosen. What use is the ranking monument? Lin Xian didn't mince her words, actually starting a dispute with the saint child of the supreme demon sect. A cold light flashed in the eyes of the saint child of the supreme demon sect as he faintly spoke. Fairy's words are truly looking down on me. As the saying goes, those who walk different paths cannot make plans together. The people Xian befriended are all people who understand me. Lin Xian coldly spoke, her meaning was clear without words. Although Qin Wentian was the saint child of the supreme demon sect, he wasn't someone she wanted to befriend. Ha 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 ha. The saint child of the supreme demon sect started laughing maniacally. His laughter was like a howl, causing the heavens and earth to tremble unceasingly. His gaze abruptly turned over, staring in the direction of Qin Wentian. Abruptly, his eyes widened in anger as he howled in madness. Instantly, the heavens and earth trembled unceasingly as a gigantic maw of blood appeared in the air, descending from the heavens, directly pressing down on Qin Wentian, wanting to swallow him whole. What a powerful bestial roar! Duan Han's eyes flickered with a cold light as he slashed out with his palms. The black-colored sword slashed out, directly cleaving the gigantic mouth into 2. The aftershocks from the aftershocks blasted onto the bodies of the disciples of the Battle Sword sect, causing their robes to flutter in the wind as their clothes were torn into shreds. "What's more, the Battle Sword sect?" Duan Han asked. The blood-eyed demonic wolf mount of the saint child of the supreme demon sect coldly glanced over, its eyes gleaming with a blood-red light, causing the hearts of the spectators to tremble. "Number 1 among all the geniuses here?" The saint child of the supreme demon sect stopped howling. He turned his gaze onto Qin Wentian, his eyes like a demon, tyrannical and sharp. "Lin Xian after we enter the immortal martial realm, I want you, the number 1 beauty under the heavens, to become my slave. As for the number 1 you speak of, he shall become my mount." As the sound of his voice faded, the blood-eyed demonic wolf mount let out a low growl before vanishing from sight, leaving behind an incomparably arrogant voice. Shameless boasting. Lin Xian's clear eyes gleamed with coldness. Her fingers plucked the strings of her zither as an intense killing intent gushed forth. "Today I've witnessed Fairy Lin's glory. If there's a chance in the future, let us meet again in the immortal martial realm." A voice rang out, only to see the silhouette of a young man drifting away. Other than this, the other geniuses on the other buildings also departed. Lin Xian said that Qin Wentian was the number 1 among all the geniuses here, There was naturally no meaning for them to remain here. Although they were competitive in their hearts, it was impossible for them to directly act against Qin Wentian. If they did so, wouldn't their hearts be a little too weak? They would remember Lin Xian'er's words. In the immortal martial realm, the ranking monument would naturally bear witness to everything. From afar, Shang Tong coldly glanced at Qin Wentian as killing intent flickered in his eyes. After which his silhouette flickered as well, temporarily departing. Qin Wentian was initially preparing to bid his farewell. Yet Lin Xian'er turned her gaze over as she smiled. "Sir Qin, do you mind coming to the Immortal Ripple Pavilion for a chat?" Qin Wentian's gaze stiffened as he stared at the smile on Lin Xian'er's face. After which, he nodded his head lightly as his silhouette flickered, flying towards the Immortal Ripple Pavilion. Why is it that all the good things under the heavens are monopolized by him alone? Lu Yun gloomily commented. Duan Han's eyes gleamed with sharpness as he spoke in a low voice. This woman is indeed worthy of being a fairy from the Celestial Maiden sect. In that battle earlier, even if I were to continue, I wouldn't be able to defeat her. Such a woman isn't someone ordinary people can control. After speaking, Duan Han directly turned and departed. Although Lin Xian'er was polite from the start, with a smile on her face, from her conversation with the Saint Child of the Supreme Demon Sect, one could tell that the Saint Child of the Supreme Demon Sect couldn't even enter her eyes. Only characters like Qin Wentian, who could defeat her in the illusory realm, would have the qualifications to get close to her. Lu Yun and the others also had a look of disappointment on their faces. Earlier, they were all defeated by Lin Xian'er in the illusory realm and naturally knew their own limits. They all turned and departed, leaving behind only a shadow-like figure standing at the side. Those from the Battle Sword sect didn't bother with him. They knew that this Mu Feng was like a shadow of Qin Wentian, as though he didn't exist at all. In the Immortal Ripple Pavilion, the curtains were pulled apart. Momentarily, countless people felt a sense of loss, as though they had lost something. Lin Xian'er was known as the #1 beauty under the heavens. Just a single glance at her would cause people to be unable to forget her beauty. Even those geniuses would feel a strong desire to protect her, let alone ordinary people. At this moment, countless figures stood there, staring at the silhouette behind the curtains. It was as though watching her quietly was a wonderful thing. Lin Xian'er changed her position, her back facing the curtains. In front of her, there was a lake with many small boats floating on it. These were all people from the Celestial Maiden sect. "Fairy, do you have any instructions for me?" Qin Wentian stood beside Lin Xian'er. Staring at her from such a close distance, Qin Wentian could clearly sense the charm of this maiden. That soft and supple skin, those soul-stirring eyes, caused people to have an urge to rush up and pull her into their embrace. A faint fragrance permeated the air, exuding a sense of elegance and nobility. "Puchi." Lin Xian'er smiled, akin to 100 flowers blooming, incomparably beautiful. "Sir Qin, why must you be so restrained? I've always treated Sir Qin as my bosom friend. Sir Qin, please don't be so distant. Wouldn't Xian'er be embarrassed?" Lin Xian'er's every frown and every smile was extremely soul-stirring. There wasn't the slightest hint of seduction within. However, this kind of natural beauty was even more attractive. That was an unfathomable natural charm. Her words and smile caused Qin Wentian to feel as though the distance between the two of them had shortened greatly. He was a little dazed as he stared at her. Shaking his head, he smiled. "Fairy, you should know how great your charm is. It's hard not to be restrained." "Oh." A shy expression appeared on Lin Xian'er's face. After which she smiled. "Sir Qin, you can just call me Xian'er. As for charm, how does Xian'er compare to the Holy Maiden? In my heart, Qingcheng is naturally the most beautiful. But in terms of charm, I'm afraid Fairy Qin is a notch higher, making it hard for people to restrain themselves." Qin Wentian bluntly stated. Mo Qingcheng was a beauty that could topple empires. Her beauty was flawless and perfect, pure and holy, cold in front of others, causing people to not dare to look at her directly. But Lin Xian'er was different. She caused people to feel an intense desire to protect her, wanting to get close to her. Sir Qin is also someone infatuated with love. It's just that if the Holy Maiden knew that Sir Qin is here, she would definitely scold me for being a demoness. Lin Xian'er laughed. After which, her fingers strummed the zither as the melodious melody rang out once more. The melody was light and beautiful, and unknowingly, Qin Wentian was intoxicated by it. Listening to the melody, it was as though he had forgotten the passage of time. The shadow of the sun slanted to the west as night descended. A full moon hung in the sky, cascading its moonlight onto the tranquil surface of the lake. In addition to the melody, it was indescribably beautiful. As Qin Wentian listened to the melody, he actually recalled all the bits and pieces of his life with Mo Qingcheng. Occasionally he would think of that silly last Qing'er. A light smile appeared on his face. This joyous melody seemed to be the sound of nature bestowed to lovers. Turning his head, Qin Wentian glanced at Lin Xian'er, who was playing the zither beside him. Under the illumination of the moonlight, her beauty was so breathtaking that it caused people to be breathless. Lin Xian'er seemed to have sensed his gaze. She also turned her gaze onto Qin Wentian as she smiled. From the peaceful smile on Sir Qin's face, I can tell that you love your wife very much. If the holy maiden misunderstands Sir Qin, please tell her that there are many misunderstandings regarding the celestial maiden sect. Xian'er isn't someone who would fall in love with romance. In the future, if I can't find a suitable man who will treat me wholeheartedly, I will follow the example of my master and remain unmarried for the rest of my life. Qin Wentian's heart trembled. Could it be that the sect leader of the Celestial Maiden sect didn't marry because she hadn't found a suitable man? Even a character like Nangongzhu couldn't move her heart. Indeed, her heart was higher than the heavens. What kind of man does Fairy Qin want to find? Qin Wentian curiously asked. There are 8 era-suppressing geniuses at the Heavenly Dipper realm in our royal sacred region. I'm sure they would only be stronger and not weaker compared to Sir Qin. Xian'er's words don't have any intentions of belittling Sir Qin. It's just that since these 8 people are said to be able to suppress an entire era, I'm sure they all have heaven-shaking talents and aren't something the saint child of the Supreme Demon sect can contend against. I wonder what kind of demeanor these 8 people have. Lin Xian'er smiled. Qin Wentian didn't mind as he smiled. For a character like Xian'er, I'm sure she would be able to find the man she loves. It's already late. Xian'er, I have to return. Qin Wentian stood up. Lin Xian'er smiled and nodded. Sir, take care. Remember to send Xian'er my regards to the Holy Maiden. As she spoke, she even winked at Qin Wentian, causing Qin Wentian to perspire. He didn't know if Mo Qingcheng would be jealous or not. We'll meet again in the future. With a flicker of his silhouette, Qin Wentian soared through the air and departed. Lin Xian'er stared at the departing back of Qin Wentian as a smile appeared on her face. She took out an ancient scroll with a few names written on it. After which, she lifted her brush and inscribed the words Qin Wentian on it. Chapter 555. Qin Wentian returned to the inn, only to see Mo Qingcheng standing in front of the window, gazing at the scenery outside. The moonlight illuminated her flawless countenance, making her seem like a celestial maiden under the moon. Qingcheng, were you waiting for me? Qin Wentian walked behind Mo Qingcheng, stretching out his hands to embrace her slender waist. A gentle smile flashed past Mo Qingcheng's face as she leaned back, leaning against Qin Wentian. After which, she seemed to have thought of something, as a coquettish expression appeared on her face. To think that you would still be willing to come back after having a long chat with the #1 beauty under the heavens. Mo Qingcheng softly spoke, as though she was jealous. Which girl in the world wouldn't be jealous? Although Mo Qingcheng was a holy maiden, she was no exception. Who asked this young man to be the man she deeply loved? However, she still wouldn't interfere in Qin Wentian's matters. It was fine as long as he was happy. If not, she wouldn't have intentionally allowed him to leave during the day. No matter how beautiful you are, how can you be more beautiful than Qingcheng? Qin Wentian hugged her tightly, his face pressed against Mo Qingcheng's. Mo Qingcheng's lips curled up in a smile, feeling joy in her heart when she heard Qin Wentian's sweet words. Humph. Mo Qingcheng snorted as she turned her head slightly, leaning against Qin Wentian's face. Their gazes locked, and a hint of shyness flashed past Mo Qingcheng's face. She hurriedly shifted her head away, as a soul-stirring shyness could still be seen on her countenance. "How is the celestial maiden from the celestial maiden sect?" Mo Qingqing asked in a light voice. "A rare beauty. Although she appears weak, her heart is as lofty as the heavens." Qin Wentian replied in a low voice. Mo Qingqing's beautiful eyes flashed with a bright light when she heard this. "Today, only you are able to enter the heavenly chamber. You, the Dumbo, is the one Lin Xian'er values the most. Doesn't that mean that in Lin Xian'er's eyes, you will become a character equal to the heavens?" "Why, can't a Dumbo like me do?" Qin Wentian joked. "Fine, at least this Lin Xian'er has some foresight." Mo Qingqing winked at Qin Wentian as a mischievous expression appeared on her face. "Of course. Don't you know who my wife is?" Qin Wentian teased. Right now in front of Mo Qingqing, he didn't feel the slightest bit of restraint. This empire-toppling maiden was the resting place of his soul. Mo Qingqing couldn't endure Qin Wentian's teasing. She nudged Qin Wentian's body with her arms. Her face was incomparably beautiful, causing Qin Wentian's heartbeat to quicken. "Lin Xian'er's aspirations are extremely lofty. She told me that if she didn't meet a husband who was loyal to her in this lifetime, she would never marry." She also revealed that the people she paid attention to should be those 8 era-suppressing heavenly dipper sovereigns. "Even I'm not worthy enough to enter her eyes." Qin Wentian laughed. Mo Qingqing's lips twitched as she lowered her head, staring at Qin Wentian. She gently laughed. "How can there be so many era-suppressing characters? In the future, when these characters contend against each other, only 1 or 2 of them would be able to suppress the era-suppressing era. Yet, she doesn't even know that one of them is right in front of her. She truly has no foresight." Qin Wentian stared at the beautiful maiden who had her head tilted upwards with a smile on her face. Boundless tenderness appeared in his heart as he pressed his lips forward, causing Mo Qingqing's beautiful eyes to blink. She had actually delivered herself into a demonic palm. After that, she felt her body becoming light as someone hugged her by the waist. This night was naturally incomparably wondrous. Early in the morning, the warm rays of the sun cascaded in through the windows. Qin Wentian walked out of his room, and when he saw the beautiful maiden who was dressing up in front of the window, a hint of warmth appeared in his heart. This empire-toppling maiden had been acquainted with him ever since they were young, and after experiencing so many trials and tribulations, they were finally able to walk together. He silently vowed in his heart that he would never let Qingqing suffer again in this lifetime. Mo Qingqing's long hair was akin to a waterfall, cascading down her back. She turned her head and glanced at Qin Wentian as she gently laughed. "You still know to wake up. Yesterday was too blissful, so I naturally woke up a little later." Qin Wentian laughed, causing Mo Qingqing's face to instantly turn red. She glared fiercely at Qin Wentian. How did this Dumbo become so naughty? Where did he still look like he was when he was young? Although he was glib-tongued, he wasn't dumb at all. Right now, the atmosphere in the immortal martial city is extremely lively. "Qingqing, let's go out for a walk later." Qin Wentian laughed. Mo Qingqing's face was still red. If others knew that this pure and holy maiden was teased by Qin Wentian in such a manner, it was unknown what expression they would have. Most probably, they would even have thoughts of killing Qin Wentian. Emichim. Lightly nodding her head, Mo Qingqing was naturally willing to spend more time with Qin Wentian. After the two of them finished washing up, they slipped out of the inn. Right now, the atmosphere in the immortal martial city was extremely lively. Experts were as common as the clouds, and the geniuses who usually had their heads held high in the air were all extremely low profile now. This was because these heavens chosen could be found anywhere. After all, the expedition to the immortal martial realm this time around had shaken the entire royal sacred region. There were countless ancient clans and sects in the royal sacred region. And how many heavens chosen would be gathered here today? This could be said to be a gathering of wind and clouds. For a beauty like Mo Qingqing, no matter where she went, she would always be the center of attention. However, just from her demeanor, one could tell that she was from a major power. Hence, nobody dared to disturb her. Walking beside Mo Qingqing, Qin Wentian was extraordinarily handsome. Although he didn't exude any aura, his countenance was as bright as the sun, and his eyes were as deep as the abyss, giving off an unfathomable feeling. The two of them walking together caused many to cast envious gazes at them. At this moment, Qin Wentian inclined his head and stared ahead. An intense fluctuation could be felt in the air as a golden light illuminated the skies. Faintly, a thunderous roar could be heard. It's the people from Radiant Gold. They are actually ganging up on a single person. That person is so powerful. From afar, voices rang out as more and more silhouettes appeared, rushing forward. Let's go take a look. Qin Wentian held on to Mo Qingqing's hand. Their silhouettes flashed as they soared through the air. An instant later, they arrived at the outskirts of the battlefield, standing at the top of an ancient building. In the air in front of them, a resplendent golden light could be seen. Numerous experts from Radiant Gold were clad in golden armor, radiating boundless radiance. They wielded golden spears in their hands, and their attacks were extremely terrifying. The cultivation bases of these people were all at the Heavenly Dipper realm. The weakest was at the 5th level, while the strongest was at the 8th level. However, the person they were ganging up on was only at the 7th level. It was unknown what kind of innate technique this person used. His body was actually 10 meters long, resembling an ancient god that could reach the heavens. His eyes shone with a golden light, and his entire body exuded an incomparably terrifying sharpness, as though they were forged from pure gold. Just an ant like you actually dares to proclaim yourself as a heaven chosen? Cultivating the law of metal, claiming to be from Radiant Gold? The gigantic silhouette roared in rage, causing the void to tremble and shatter. An ancient golden spear pierced through the air, directly piercing into his body. The terrifying force caused the ancient spear to pierce into his body, only to discover that the spear was blocked by the golden bones and blood, unable to penetrate any further. What a terrifying defense. Both of them are at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper, yet this person can't even break through the defense of that giant. Qin Wentian's countenance trembled violently. There's always a sky beyond a sky. This person was truly terrifying. That gigantic figure waved his palms as a golden palm imprint the size of a millstone smashed downwards. With a thunderous boom, the body of the person who attacked him was directly crushed into smithereens. Not even dregs remained. The rage of the other experts from Radiant Gold towered up into the sky. They surrounded the gigantic figure, not daring to act recklessly. Their countenances were all ashen, incomparably unsightly to behold. Li Tian, you are too much. An expert from Radiant Gold roared in rage. Upon hearing his words, the countenances of many in the crowd brightened. There were also some who had already guessed the identity of this person, but their countenances didn't change. He's Li Tian from the Heaven Punisher clan. No wonder he's so powerful. Qin Wentian mumbled. Li Tian, a supreme genius from the Heaven Punisher clan of the Desolate Mountain Range, one of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses at the Heavenly Dipper realm. He was unrivaled on the sacred battle platform within the same cultivation level. There was no one who could match up to him. Jumping levels to kill was as easy as taking something out of his pocket. What was an era-suppressing genius? It meant that other than these 8, there was no one else who could match up to their radiance. After they matured, they would be the true era-suppressing geniuses. Naturally, who among these 8 would be eliminated, and who would remain would have to depend on their own luck and fate. But there was no need to doubt their strength. Li Tian from the Heaven Punisher clan. It's rumored that he only cultivates a single type of energy, the mandate of metal. Right now, his body is akin to an indestructible golden body. His bones, flesh, and blood are all forged from pure gold. He pursues the pinnacle of the mandate of metal, and when the mandate of metal reaches a certain level, both his offense and defense would be extremely terrifying. Just like this Li Tian, his pursuit of the mandate of metal is his conviction. Mo Qingqing had naturally heard of Li Tian before. At this moment, Li Tian stepped out as his blood surged. Even the blood in his body was golden in color, transforming into a golden long spear that frenziedly extended outwards. With a howl of rage, the golden spear pierced through the air, causing an expert from Radiant Gold to explosively retreat. However, Li Tian's golden spear flew out of his hand, and with a piercing sound, It pierced through the body of his opponent, causing him to rapidly descend from the air. With a deafening boom, a building collapsed. The golden long spear pierced through the ground, nailing the body of that expert to the ground. Such might was simply terrifying. Wentian, if you suppress your cultivation base to the same level, do you have the confidence to fight against him? Mo Qingqing stared at Qin Wentian as she asked. She had absolute trust in Qin Wentian. She had always believed that Qin Wentian would definitely be able to become an era-suppressing existence. I have no idea. Li Tian didn't use his full strength when fighting against these people. I have no idea how strong his limits are, and I've never tested the strength of his defense before. Qin Wentian shook his head. It was very hard to judge who was stronger just by looking at his opponent's attacks. But this was also the first time Qin Wentian met someone he didn't have the confidence to fight against at the same level. If they fought against each other at the same level, the victor would be unknown. Ants from Radiant Gold, you better take a detour when you see me in the future. Today, I shall spare your dog lives. Li Tian coldly spoke. After which, he soared into the air and disappeared in the blink of an eye. Yet he left behind a deep impression in the hearts of the spectators. Given Li Tian's demeanor, the other 7 shouldn't be inferior to him. This trip to the immortal martial realm was truly filled with anticipation. On the ranking monument of the immortal martial realm, would those 8 era-suppressing geniuses be able to occupy the top 8 positions? Chapter 556. The remaining experts from Radiant Gold all had ashen expressions on their faces. They came from an ancient country, and were the most outstanding members of the younger generation, preparing to enter the immortal martial realm. In the center, there was a 7th-level Heavenly Dipper young man with a golden crown on his head. He was a heaven chosen from Radiant Gold, and it was unknown how tyrannical his strength was. The others all stood guard around him, but because of a few arrogant words spoken by Li Tian, a huge battle ensued. Not only that, with so many experts present, none of them could do anything to Li Tian. Li Tian killed a few of them in a domineering manner, leaving behind arrogant words before he soared into the air and departed. Go. That heaven chosen coldly spoke. His silhouette flickered as he brought the experts from Radiant Gold away, leaving behind a golden glow in the air. There's always someone stronger, there's always someone stronger. These people were all arrogant geniuses, yet they didn't expect to encounter an even more demon-level character like Li Tian, suffering such humiliation. Someone sighed, his words causing many to nod in agreement. The royal sacred region was simply too vast, so vast that you had no idea how many demon-level geniuses would appear here. Remember a few hundred years ago in the immortal martial realm, quite a few era-suppressing geniuses were all killed by a nameless nobody. That incident simply shook the entire royal sacred region. That person domineeringly seized the position of the top ranker of the immortal martial realm. After that, that nameless person grew stronger and stronger, and not long after he exited the immortal martial realm, he was listed as the top ranker of the Mortal King rankings, becoming a character that everyone in the royal sacred region knew of. After that, he forcefully entered the royal sacred sect, and became a legend of his generation. There's another battle over there. At this moment, exclamations of shock rang out as the shockwaves from a battle could be felt. However, these shockwaves weren't as intense as when Li Tian fought against the experts from Radiant Gold. Evidently, the combatants weren't as powerful as Li Tian. What's going on today? It's actually that little ancestor from one of the 7 great clans, the D clan. There's actually someone who dares to antagonize him? Another voice rang out, causing an intense commotion as many people sped towards the direction of the battle. That little ancestor from the D clan was extremely famous. The D clan of the 7 great clans. Qin Wentian's countenance flickered. There were 9 sects, 7 clans, and 2 empires in the royal sacred region. All of them were at the peak of power. These 7 clans weren't any weaker compared to the 9 great sects, and in fact, they were even stronger compared to several ancient countries. They had existed for tens of thousands of years, and their foundations were extremely deep. The D clan was one of the 7 great clans. Other than that, The reason why the D clan was famous was because one of the Heaven Dipper sovereigns that suppressed the era was from the D clan. D Shur, one of the era-suppressing geniuses, equal in fame to Li Tian. Not only so, there were also many demon-level geniuses in this generation of the D clan. D Shur's younger brother, Diyu, was a young Heaven's Chosen. His cultivation speed was terrifying, and his combat prowess was exceedingly high. His talent was extremely close to D Shur's. In the D clan alone, there were already 2 Heavens Chosen, causing countless people to be envious. This Diyu was born from a noble background, and was a member of the core bloodline of D Shur. His clan treated him well, using the best conditions to nurture him, and he also had the protection of an era-suppressing genius elder brother. He was truly doted on by the entire clan, and he was arrogant and despotic, doing whatever he wanted to do. The people of the D clan all listened to him, and this was why Diyu was referred to as the little ancestor of the D clan by outsiders. It was unknown how many troubles he had caused, but his clan and his elder brother D Shur had always helped him to settle them. Now that Diyu had appeared, there was no doubt that D Shur wouldn't be too far away. It seemed like these 2 brothers were already preparing to enter the immortal martial realm. Li Tian's demeanor. I wonder what sort of characters the Heavens Chosen of the D clan are. I wonder if I'll be able to see D Shur. Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice, pulling Mo Qingqing along as they moved towards the direction of the fluctuations. In just an instant, they had already arrived at the farthest point of the battlefield. In front of them, 2 groups of people were currently engaged in battle. One of them had the appearance of a young man around 20 years of age, and his face was still filled with a delicate air. His eyes were filled with an unbridled arrogance, and it was very easy to read his gaze. It made people understand that although this young man had outstanding talent, he hadn't experienced too many trials and tribulations. Hence he looked young and immature. However, one couldn't help but be jealous of his talent. At the age of 20, he already had a cultivation base at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper. His combat prowess was even more terrifying. And at such a young age, there weren't many in the entire Royal Sacred Region. Because of Diyu's innate talent in sensing constellations, he had already condensed a constellation from the 3rd heavenly layer when he was 8 years old. And after that, he stepped onto the path of cultivation. As for the person fighting against Diyu, he was actually a little comical. It was actually a fatty with a cultivation base at the 4th level of Heavenly Dipper. Although this fatty looked clumsy, his speed was extremely fast. Not only that, his mental energy was also extremely terrifying, and he was able to fight against Diyu endlessly. When Qin Wentian arrived here, his gaze froze. Among the 2 combatants, the countenance of one of them was so familiar to him. He recognized every single one of them. As for that fatty who was fighting, he was naturally even more familiar with him. This damnable fatty. It's been so long but he still hasn't lost any weight. A gentle smile appeared on Qin Wentian's face. Other than Fan Lu, who else could it be? As for the group behind Fan Lu, Ouyang Guangxing, Yin Mingyi, Chu Meng and Qin Zheng, the 5 of them actually roamed the royal tomb together after they obtained the inheritance. But at this moment, Qin Wentian furrowed his brows. That last Bai Qing wasn't here. Where did she go? Right now, of those who had entered the royal tomb, Mu Feng was beside him, and now Fan Lu and the rest had also appeared. Only that last Bai Qing was missing. The person Qin Wentian was most worried about was Bai Qing. She cultivated devil arts and her temperament had changed drastically. Only he and her master could influence her. And now that her master had fallen, Bai Qing was also extremely heartbroken. Did she manage to pass the inheritance of the chaotic Sky Devil Emperor? Damnable fatty. This young master will chop you into pieces to feed to my pets. At this moment, Diyu roared. His body glowed with a resplendent light, as though he was a divine weapon. With a single palm strike, a gigantic ferocious bird of prey appeared, tearing towards Fan Lu. Little bastard, your granddaddy is waiting for you. A terrifying light flickered in Fan Li's eyes. It was as though his opponent's attacks had slowed down. Back then, Fan Lu was already proficient in mental energy, and now, it was even more terrifying. His body moved like the wind as he retreated, after which, numerous bows and arrows appeared in his hands, shooting out in unison. Diyu howled in rage. His attacks were incomparably terrifying, shattering the arrows. However, Fanla didn't stop shooting arrows. They were as nimble as his hands and legs. Diyu's attacks were incomparably terrifying, shattering the arrows. Scram! With a howl of rage, a divine bird of prey appeared behind Diyu, radiating a resplendent light. His entire body was like a divine weapon, allowing the arrows to slam into him, not moving an inch. You dare to proclaim yourself as my granddaddy? You are dead for sure. You have completely angered this young master. Diyu floated in the air. Although his cultivation base was only at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper, the might he exuded was extremely terrifying. Ever since he was young, he had always been a Heaven's chosen. Only he had the right to insult others, who would dare to bully him. So what if I angered you? This genius will wait and see. Fanla coldly spoke. However, at this moment, Diyu's gaze shifted to Yun Mingyi, who was behind Fanla. In the blink of an eye, a warm smile appeared on his face as he spoke. This fairy sister, have you considered it? Do you want to be this young master's concubine? This young master loves icy beauties like you the most. Yun Mingyi's countenance flickered with coldness as she stared at Diyu. She didn't expect that there would actually be such a brazen person in the royal sacred region, wanting to capture her in broad daylight and make her his concubine. You are courting death. Yun Mingyi coldly spoke. The things this young master wants, there's nothing I can't obtain. Since fairy sister doesn't want to be my concubine, I can only use force. Don't blame this young master for not knowing how to show tenderness to the fairer sex. Diyu coldly spoke. He had always been unbridled in his actions, but he wouldn't have tried to snatch this woman away. It was just that he had coincidentally met her today and teased her. Yet these people actually dared to be so arrogant. Especially that fatty, he actually dared to call him a little bastard. This had completely enraged Diyu. The consequences would be extremely severe. He decided to kill these people, and as for that beautiful fairy sister, he could have a good time with her. He had always been fond of icy beauties like her. This little brat is truly arrogant. Ouyang Guangxing cursed. He thought that he was already arrogant enough back in the Azure continent. But when compared to the person before him, he was still far from being able to compare. Indeed, he has already surpassed you. At this moment, Ouyang Guangxing heard a voice drifting over. Turning his gaze over, he saw 2 silhouettes walking towards him. Ouyang Guangxing's eyes instantly lit up as he laughed uproariously. Haha, I already guessed that you would come to the immortal martial realm. And as expected, we really met. Chu Mang, Qin Zheng and the rest all stared at Qin Wentian as their eyes gleamed with sharpness. Yun Mingyi's beautiful eyes also flickered with a bright light as she glanced at Mo Qingqing beside him. Back then in the battle at the Pill Emperor Hall, although they didn't personally experience it, they knew that Mo Qingqing was actually safe and sound. Not only that, her aura was even more outstanding than before, radiating a resplendent light, as well as a hint of femininity. Damn, boss, we actually met here? Fanlu exclaimed in surprise. Damn, fatty, you're still as fat as ever. Where's Xian Xian? Why don't I see her? Qin Wentian laughed. She's in the Mystic Maiden Palace of Grand Xia. I don't feel at ease letting her come out to roam the immortal realms with me. I'll go fetch her in the future. Fanlu grinned. After which, he glanced at Mo Qingqing beside him before flashing a thumbs up to Qin Wentian. Boss, you're really good. You can call me sister-in-law now, right? Mo Qingqing blushed, causing many in the surroundings to stare in a daze. What day was today? There was actually 2 supreme beauties here. There was no need to mention Mo Qingqing, but Yun Mingyi was also extremely beautiful. Haha, there's actually another beauty here. Sister Fairy, how about you follow me? You'll have a better future compared to them. Diyu laughed uproariously when he saw these people reminiscing about the past. Since they were in cahoots, he wouldn't be polite anymore. Snatching one was snatching, 2 was also snatching. Not only that, the one at the back seemed to be even more interesting. How beautiful! Most probably, she could even be compared to the rumored number 1 beauty under the heavens. Chapter 557. The more Diyu looked at them, the the happier he felt. Two such beauties. If his elder brother liked one of them, he would gift one to his elder brother. Although cultivation was the most important thing, he couldn't lack beauties either. Only then would his life be interesting. Diyu was doted on by countless people. He was originally someone who wasn't afraid of anything in the heavens or earth. Even in the immortal martial city, he didn't restrain himself at all. This was why he teased Yunmingyi when he saw her. Yet he didn't expect her to actually insult him. Was she truly courting death? In that case, he could only snatch her away. This Mo Qingqing was extremely beautiful. Diyu naturally knew that she might have an extraordinary background. However, he didn't care. As one of the 7 great clans of the royal sacred region, the number of people they feared was already very few. Even if he offended characters like the saint children and holy maidens, he wouldn't care. How many saint children and holy maidens could compare to his elder brother Dishur? Not only that, he himself didn't really care about those saint children and holy maidens. His talent wasn't any weaker compared to his elder brother Dishur, and sooner or later, he would also become an era-suppressing genius. It was just that right now, his brilliance was temporarily overshadowed by his elder brother. However, on the other side, Qin Wentian had just reunited with his brothers. He was originally extremely happy in his heart. Yet a single sentence from Diyu caused his mood to completely vanish. Shifting his gaze over, his eyes flashed with coldness as he stared at Diyu. In an instant, a terrifying killing intent flashed in his eyes, enveloping Diyu, causing him to frown. Only then did he start to size up Qin Wentian, who was beside Mo Qingqing. You actually want to kill me? Diyu's countenance turned cold as he arrogantly spoke. How ridiculous! Someone like you isn't worthy of this fairy sister. Such a beautiful sister was tainted by you, what a pity. In the future, I will take good care of this fairy sister. Mo Qingqing similarly radiated coldness. Diyu was very clear what he was saying. He was intentionally angering them. The coldness in Qin Wentian's eyes intensified. He stepped out as a long spear appeared in his hands. This long spear was only an ordinary weapon. It didn't exude any intense aura. Fan Le stepped aside when he saw Qin Wentian walking over. Staring at the killing intent in Qin Wentian's eyes, Fan Le's heart trembled. He was extremely clear on how crazy Qin Wentian was. Back then in Grand Xia, Qin Wentian dragged the demon sword for Mo Qingqing for 10,000 miles, sacrificing his blood to the demon sword to split apart the Pill Emperor Hall. You had no regard for his own life. Mo Qingqing was his reverse scale, the brat. 5th level of Heavenly Dipper. Diyu stared at Qin Wentian as he neared. The experts behind Diyu wanted to take a step forward, yet Diyu stretched out his hand to stop them. Just watch, my elder brother can jump 2 levels and kill someone with ease. I can do the same as well. Today, I shall let the blood of this man bear witness to my journey to the immortal martial realm. The experts behind him halted their steps, but they didn't act. Although their young master was arrogant, his strength and talent were extremely high. He wouldn't feel too much pressure fighting against 5th-level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns. Even if he wasn't a match for them, he would still be able to retreat unscathed. If you die in my hands, I hope that fairy sister won't hate me. If not, if she isn't willing, I can only use force. That wouldn't be fun. Diyu stared at Qin Wentian as he arrogantly spoke. His voice was piercing to the ears, causing the spectators to sigh in admiration. As expected of the little ancestor of the D clan, he had no scruples at all, even in the immortal martial city. Behind Diyu, the shadow of a ferocious bird shone with a resplendent green light, exuding a towering baleful aura. It was like a monster, staring at the approaching Qin Wentian. Qin Wentian advanced step by step. In the blink of an eye, the distance between him and Diyu was only 100 meters. Such a distance could be traversed in an instant. You are courting death. Qin Wentian coldly spat out. Astral light erupted forth as he executed stellar transposition. In an instant his silhouette vanished from sight, leaving behind a series of afterimages. The spectators only saw that at the end of the afterimages, Qin Wentian's long spear pierced straight towards Diyu. At the instant the spear pierced out, Diyu felt his vision blurring. In front of him was a blood-colored space as boundless blood-colored light shot towards him, wanting to end his life. Not good. The people behind Diyu all had shocked expressions on their faces. The speed of this spear was too fast, so fast that it caused them to feel fear. They didn't even have the time to make a sound, and the spear had already neared Diyu's head. There was no need to doubt the might of this spear. This spear strike was capable of ending his life. Save me. Diyu also let out a roar. Azure light instantly enveloped his entire body, and he suddenly leapt up. He was like a giant azure bird that soared into the sky in an instant, as if he wanted to travel into the distance in an instant. His speed was also extremely fast. Pung! A light sound rang out. The body of the azure bird froze in the air before it was flung through the air. Diyu coughed out a mouthful of blood as his countenance turned pale. That impact from the spear felt as though it wanted to shatter his internal organs. However, a look of joy flashed in Diyu's eyes. Just a little bit more, and he would have been finished. Luckily, the speed of the azure rock was as fast as lightning, allowing him to avoid the fate of having his throat pierced by that spear. The spear merely struck his chest. Although he was injured, his life was saved. Divine weapon! Qin Wentian's eyes gleamed with sharpness. He was very clear on the might of his attack. If it had struck Diyu, with his cultivation base at the 3rd level of Heavenly Dipper, even if his defense was heaven-defying, his internal organs would still be shattered by that spear. But earlier, the spear managed to block it. Diyu was clad in an extremely powerful divine armor that was able to block it. I want you to live a life worse than death. Diyu howled in rage. A ferocious light flashed in his eyes. He was forced back by Qin Wentian's spear, and coincidentally, the other experts had already caught up. They didn't dare to be careless in the slightest. Crazy, who is this person? He actually dared to kill Diyu? The gazes of the spectators froze. This was the little ancestor of one of the 7 great clans, Diyu, one of the twin prides of the Di clan, the younger brother of Dishur. If this person killed Diyu, the entire Di clan would definitely spare no expense to kill him. That spear strike earlier almost killed Diyu. This isn't a joke, this person's strength is extremely powerful. The hearts of the spectators trembled, while the eyes of Fan Lu and the others brightened. This fellow was as expected of a freak. After they exited the royal tomb of Grand Xia, they had experienced many tempering experiences, and even stepped into the forbidden grounds of Grand Xia, experiencing a calamity there. Naturally, it was also a great stroke of good fortune for them. In addition to the inheritances they obtained in the royal tomb, the strength of each of them had increased greatly. But even so, there was still a gap between them and Qin Wentian. That spear strike of his was already extremely shocking. Diyu coughed out a mouthful of blood, staring fixedly at Qin Wentian. If it wasn't for his defensive divine weapon dissipating the vast majority of the impact, even if that spear strike didn't penetrate through his body, it would have already killed him. Earlier, he even boasted that he would defeat Qin Wentian. How could his killing intent not surge up into the skies? I've changed my mind. After I kill the 2 of you, I want to ravage these 2 women ruthlessly until they die. Diyu stared at Mo Qingqing and Yunmingyi, his eyes gleaming with a venomous light. With an intention of his will, the long spear vanished as the scarlet demon halberd appeared in Qin Wentian's hands. The blood in his body seethed as his eyes gleamed with a terrifying demonic light. Astral light erupted forth as his silhouette vanished once more. From the center of his brows, a terrifying beam of light shot forth, shooting into Diyu's mind. Diyu's mind was instantly filled with a dream devil state as he roared in rage. Kill him, kill him! The experts beside Diyu didn't expect Qin Wentian to be so crazy, actually wanting to kill Diyu. Terrifying auras erupted forth from them as they instantly blasted out their attacks towards Qin Wentian, wanting to block the halberd strike that would kill Diyu. Bang! Astral light flashed once more as Qin Wentian transformed into a series of afterimages, soaring up into the air. Careful up there! An expert roared in rage, only to see the scarlet demon halberd slashing downwards, wanting to pierce through Diyu's head. Get lost! One of them rushed towards Qin Wentian, and a beam of treasure light appeared. This treasure light transformed into a ferocious bird that grabbed towards Qin Wentian's body. Buzz! The scarlet demon halberd shot out. In that instant, The scarlet demon halberd in his hands vanished into thin air, soundlessly and without a trace. However, the treasured light from the scarlet demon halberd directly shattered. The body of the peak-level 6th-level Heavenly Dipper Sovereign blocking in front of Qin Wentian was directly penetrated through. Fresh blood splattered as a terrifying force penetrated through the heart of that Heavenly Dipper Sovereign. "No!" the man roared. "Young master, run!" Someone roared in rage. The scarlet demon halberd pierced through that person's body, continuing to pierce towards Diyu below. That expert only had one last breath left, and a malevolent expression appeared on his face. He used all his strength to rush out, causing the direction of the scarlet demon halberd that pierced through his body to change. The crescent blades of the scarlet demon halberd sliced through his body, causing him to feel so much pain that he wished he was dead. However, he knew that he would definitely die. Even if he died, he wouldn't allow Qin Wentian to kill Diyu. This person had to be buried with him. Arg! A miserable shriek rang out, shaking the eardrums of the expert protecting Diyu. That was Diyu's voice. The crowd only saw the scarlet demon halberd piercing through Diyu's shoulder. In an instant, fresh blood flowed out, looking extremely miserable. At the instant he was attacked, Diyu took out a feather that shone with a terrifying azure light. A crazed look flashed in his eyes as he stabbed the feather into the air. A moment later, the body between him and Qin Wentian was directly severed. Qin Wentian could already sense a terrifying aura when the feather appeared. Astral light flashed, and when the feather sliced through him, his body vanished as he pulled out the scarlet demon halberd. Madness, this was truly madness. The crowd stared dumbfoundedly at this scene. Diyu still wanted to use this man to test his own combat prowess, but he didn't expect that this man wouldn't tolerate him insulting his wife. He acted with the intent to take Diyu's life. No matter what your status is, there was only a single word in his eyes: kill. At this moment, Diyu was in an extremely miserable state. Fresh blood gushed out from his shoulder, his right shoulder drooped downwards, his entire arm hanging limply. All the meridians in his body seemed to have been completely shattered, causing him to scream in agony. Ever since he was young, he was a heaven's chosen, surrounded by the stars. When had he ever been in such a miserable state? Chapter 558. That feather. Many people noticed the feather in Diyu's hand. Although Diyu was heavily injured, the instant that feather sliced through the air, a brilliant azure light illuminated the skies. The person standing between him and Qin Wentian was neatly sliced into two. In front of that azure light, the body of that person was like a piece of paper, easily torn apart. What a powerful treasure! A single feather actually exudes such a terrifying baleful aura. The D clan of the 7 great clans of the royal sacred region has the bloodline of an ancient ferocious bird, the azure roc. They are proficient in the art of the azure roc, and it's said that the guardian beast of the D clan is a ferocious bird that has lived for tens of thousands of years. Could this feather have been plucked from the body of the azure roc? Everyone stared at the feather in Diyu's hand. Earlier, if Qin Wentian was a little slower, he would have been sliced into two by that feather. Luckily, Qin Wentian's speed was exceedingly fast, transforming into a series of afterimages. If he was a little slower, he would have already died. The protection of this little ancestor of the D clan was truly thorough. With this feather, even Heavenly Dipper sovereigns who wanted to kill him could be countered by him at any time. In fact, if celestial phenomenon ascendants were careless, they might even be ambushed by him. No wonder the guards around him were at ease with him fighting against Qin Wentian. However, they didn't expect Qin Wentian's methods to be so powerful. The moment he acted, Diyu didn't even have a chance to retaliate. That spear strike almost claimed Diyu's life, not even giving him the chance to take out the feather. The second halberd strike was similarly extremely dangerous. Only to see that the azure feather in Diyu's hand was activated at the last moment precisely, because he wanted to take Qin Wentian's life. But who would have thought that the will of Qin Wentian's opponent would be so terrifying, directly penetrating into his brain, causing him to be in such a miserable state. Around Diyu, many people surrounded him, not daring to give Qin Wentian any more chances. These people all released their auras, their countenances were cold, and their killing intent permeated the air, only to see one of them abruptly let out a long howl. This howl penetrated through the clouds, instantly traveling far away, causing the eardrums of everyone to tremble. Everyone instantly understood what this person wanted to do. He was summoning the experts of the D clan over. No matter who you are today, don't even think about leaving here alive. Only to see that the cultivation base of the person who let out the long howl was extremely powerful. At the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper, he stared fixedly at Qin Wentian. If this person managed to leave here alive today, given the personality of this little ancestor Du, he would definitely vent his anger on them. Shameless boasting. A cold snort rang out, after which, a few silhouettes clad in white walked out. They were all young women and were extremely beautiful, causing the eyes of the people in the surroundings to stare fixedly at them. What was going on today? Why were there so many beautiful women here? These maidens surrounded the battlefield, surrounding the experts from the Supreme D clan. Their eyes flickered with coldness as they stared at Du. Du of the Supreme D clan insulted the holy maiden of our medicine sovereign valley. If you apologize today, we can spare you. Holy maiden of the medicine sovereign valley? The countenances of the spectators were all taken aback. After which, they turned their gazes onto Mo Qingqing as they instantly understood. No wonder this maiden's aura was so outstanding. She was actually the legendary heavens chosen from the medicine sovereign valley, the one who managed to concoct a 5th-ranked medicinal pill. The status of the medicine sovereign valley in the royal sacred region was transcendent, and they rarely participated in the disputes of the external world. However, no one dared to underestimate the strength of the medicine sovereign valley. The Supreme D clan was one of the 7 great clans. How could they not be incomparably tyrannical? Such a situation caused expressions of excitement to appear on the faces of the spectators. This battle was getting more and more interesting. One of the 7 great clans, the Supreme D clan, actually offended someone from the medicine sovereign valley. In that case, even if the Supreme D clan summoned their celestial phenomenon ascendants, they wouldn't dare to act against the medicine sovereign valley. If not, this wouldn't be a simple battle between juniors, but a war between 2 great sections. Those from the Supreme D clan also felt their hearts trembling as their countenances turned unsightly to behold. Young Master Du's words earlier weren't polite at all, saying that he wanted to abduct that maiden away to be his concubine, and even said some dirty words. If she was a young miss from an ordinary transcendent power, it would still be fine. But she was actually the holy maiden of the medicine sovereign valley, a 5th-ranked alchemist. Those 8 era-suppressing geniuses represented the pinnacle of the martial path. This was the peak of the younger generation, while the holy maiden of the medicine sovereign valley represented the pinnacle of the alchemy path. But now that both sides were in conflict, it was already impossible to make peace even if they wanted to. So its elder sister, holy maiden of the medicine sovereign valley. In that case, that's even better. You can marry me. At most, I'll just let elder sister holy maiden be my wife and not a concubine. Du's countenance was malevolent. Although he was smiling, he gave off a sinister coldness. How arrogant was this little ancestor Du, wanting him to admit his mistakes and compromise? Dream on. Mo Qingqing's countenance was ice cold. Because she had always been beside Qin Wentian, she didn't say much. However, Du had humiliated her again and again. Even a clay doll would have 3 points of fire. Not only that, during the period when she was away from Qin Wentian, her temper wasn't too good. Kill him. Mo Qingqing icily commanded. In front of Qin Wentian, Du said that he wanted to abduct her to be his wife. How could she not be angry? Yes. Those from the medicine sovereign valley stepped forwards, closing in on Du. Du was tightly gripping the feather in his hand, emitting a terrifying azure light. Fan Lu and the others were all extremely shocked today. Mo Qingqing actually became the holy maiden of the medicine sovereign valley. They had been in the royal sacred region for quite some time now, and naturally had a clear understanding of the major powers in the royal sacred region. They had heard some rumors about the holy maiden of the medicine sovereign valley, but they didn't expect that it would actually be Mo Qingqing. Who would have thought that during our reunion today, We would actually have to slaughter that little brat. Ouyang Guangxing coldly spoke. Lightning crackled around him as he exuded a tyrannical aura. Right now, his cultivation base was at the 4th level of Heavenly Dipper. Back then, he and Chu Meng both obtained the inheritance of the Tyrant Emperor, causing their strength to rise by quite a bit. Other than this, Fan Lu, Chu Meng and Yun Mingi were all at the 4th level of Heavenly Dipper. As for Qin Zheng, he had already stepped into the 5th level. However, Qin Wentian didn't find this strange. Back then in the unmatched realm, Qin Zheng and Yun Mingi were the same as him. Both of them had the qualifications to cultivate the 36 mountains. At that time, even Ouyang Guangxing didn't have such an achievement. From this, one could tell how high the talent of Qin Zheng and Yun Mingi were. One must know that there were many geniuses from the transcendent powers who entered the unmatched realm back then. But those who could obtain the qualifications to cultivate in the 36 mountains were extremely few. Fatty Chu Meng, that little bastard's feather is extremely powerful. You guys use your arrows to attack. Qin Zheng, use your spatial energy to restrict him. Yun Mingi, restrict their movements. We will go and slaughter him. Ouyang Guangxing slowly spoke. Everyone nodded their heads. Evidently they were already used to fighting side by side. Most probably, such a scenario had already happened many times before. Chu Meng and Fan Le both took out their bows. Their astral souls and astral novas appeared at the same time, as arrows appeared. The two of them soared up into the air, and instantly unleashed a barrage of arrows, aiming for Diyu's life. These people truly don't care about their lives. They clearly know that their opponent is Diyu from the Supreme D clan. Yet they still want to kill him. The spectators from afar felt their hearts trembling. This time around, Diyu, this little ancestor, had truly met a tough opponent. Die for me, Diyu coldly snorted, clutching the feather in his hands tightly. Upon seeing the arrows flying towards him, his feather abruptly arced through the air as an azure light flashed, slashing apart everything in a radius of a few hundred meters. However, at the instant he waved his palms, the arrows abruptly changed directions, flying towards two sides. After which, they actually continued flying towards the direction of the azure light, causing the wind to howl in rage. You want to kill me with such an attack? Diyu coldly spoke. The ferocious bird behind him shone with a brilliant azure light as the glow of a divine weapon circulated around him. Blasting out with his palms, a gigantic sharp claw manifested, slashing towards the incoming arrows. At the same time they were fighting, the experts from the Medicine Sovereign Valley and the Supreme D clan had already started their battle. Instantly, the atmosphere in that area became chaotic as their astral souls and astral novas shone resplendently. Wait for me here. Qin Wentian spoke in a low voice to Mo Qingqing who was beside him. After which, he stepped out as his sword-type astral nova floated above his head. Instantly, a terrifying sword might manifested in the air. Qin Wentian's eyes were cold. Stepping out in the air, every step he took felt as though he was stepping on the hearts of the people around him, as though there was sword chi penetrating through their bodies. Protect the little young master. They stared at Qin Wentian, only to see a violent demonic chi gushing forth from him. At the same time, sword chi whistled through the air. Bang! Another step landed. Diyu groaned in misery as his countenance turned pale. Qin Wentian activated his bloodline power, unleashing the 7 Annihilation swordplay. How terrifying was that? He wanted to kill Diyu through the air. Those who were in front of Diyu all discovered that the 7 Annihilation swordplay couldn't block it at all. Not only was Diyu suffering from the attacks, they were suffering as well. When the 5th step landed, waves of sword chi gushed forth. Diyu groaned in misery as he coughed out fresh blood. At the same time, an ice-cold intent bore down on him. That was Yun Mingi walking closer. Her terrifying freezing energy caused their bodies to be covered in frost, causing their resistance to grow weaker and weaker. My elder brother will be here soon. He will kill all of you. Diyu roared in rage as he unceasingly coughed out blood. Stay your hands down. As if in response to Diyu's words, an enraged roar rang out from the sky, bringing with it a torrential killing intent. In the distance, there seemed to be an incomparably resplendent cyan light flickering. The crowd seemed to see an ancient ferocious bird rapidly flashing over. That terrifying speed was simply horrifying. His cultivation base is clearly at the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper, but the aura he exudes is so strong that even 8th level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns wouldn't be this strong. Seems like Dishur has arrived. These people are in for it. The hearts of the spectators mused. The era-suppressing heaven-chosen Dishur. He could even kill 9th level Heavenly Dipper sovereigns with ease. How terrifying was his strength. All of you have to die. All of you have to die. Even the Holy Maiden will become my plaything. Du's countenance grew even more malevolent when he heard the voice of his elder brother. The feather in his hands frenziedly slashed out as he coughed out blood. He had never been in such a miserable state before. He wanted revenge. No matter who it was, they had to pay the price. Regardless of the Saint's son or Holy Maiden, he wanted revenge. Die. Qin Wentian took another step forward, and as the 6th step landed, Du's voice abruptly stopped. The terrifying sword qi penetrated through his body, wanting to destroy his internal organs. He coughed out large mouthfuls of blood, and was on the verge of death. However, that incomparably resplendent azure light arrived, bringing with it a towering rage. His eyes turned azure, and everywhere he passed by, no one dared to match his gaze. He could kill with a single glance. Pucci. A light sound rang out. A maiden from the Medicine Sovereign Valley directly died, transforming into a rain of blood under the azure light. That azure light was like a bolt of lightning, shooting towards Qin Wentian. Chapter 559. He's here, Dishur has arrived. That girl at the peak of the 6th level of Heavenly Dipper died instantly. The spectators from afar felt their hearts trembling when they saw that azure light. Not long ago, they had witnessed how powerful Li Tian was, and now, they actually saw Dishur's strength. Given Dishur's personality, he wouldn't care about saint children or holy maidens when his younger brother was almost killed. That azure light was extremely fast. Even before it arrived, Qin Wentian already felt a stifling pressure gushing towards him. The baleful aura exuded by that azure light felt as though it could tear the heavens and earth apart, giving him an extreme sense of danger. Careful! Mo Qingqing's beautiful eyes widened in shock when she saw that azure light. She stepped forward as she called out in alarm. Qin Wentian's countenance was ice-cold. Stepping out, he executed the final strike of the 7 Annihilations swordplay, accompanied by the humming of his astral nova. Instantly, a boundless amount of sword might gushed forth with the body of his opponent as the center, frenziedly lacerating his opponent's body. Arg! A shrill cry rang out, resembling the roar of a ferocious bird. The tyrannical baleful aura transformed into a terrifying vortex that enveloped Qin Wentian. A beam of light tore through the vortex, penetrating through the sword might, and directly grabbing towards Qin Wentian's astral nova. Pung! Even his astral nova was forced backwards. That beam of light was like the gigantic talon of a ferocious bird, swooping down from the heavens, aiming for Qin Wentian. Its might was unfathomably terrifying, and its attack speed was so fast that even the naked eye couldn't follow it. Qin Wentian felt as though the entire space around him was locked down. That beam of light transformed into the shadow of a ferocious bird, staring at him as a terrifying might enveloped the entire space. It wasn't that he had never seen a 7th level Heavenly Dipper sovereign before. Back then when he fought against Yi Kongfan, he had personally experienced the strength of a 7th level Heavenly Dipper sovereign. However, Yi Kongfan was like an insignificant firefly when compared to the person in front of him. The disparity was simply too great. What was an era suppressor? They were practically invincible in the same realm, and surpassing realms was as easy as eating rice. The power of his bloodline erupted in an instant as the Scarlet Demon halberd struck out soundlessly, vanishing into thin air without a trace. With a loud bang, the Scarlet Demon halberd collided with the treasured light, and the terrifying rebounding force sent Qin Wentian flying. His arm that was holding onto the Scarlet Demon halberd felt as though it was about to split apart, and a sharp pain shot through his body. Borrowing the force of the rebound, Qin Wentian executed stellar transposition, instantly retreating far away. He only saw a green-colored silhouette floating in the air, exuding an unexcelled aura. His eyes were filled with tyranny, akin to the gaze of a ferocious bird, sharper than a sharp blade, capable of penetrating through people. Buzz! A gust of wind gusted by. He didn't continue his attack on Qin Wentian, but instead, appeared in front of his younger brother Diyu. Right now, Diyu was being supported by someone. It was unknown how many of his meridians had been destroyed, and he was on the verge of death. If Di Shi had arrived a step later, Diyu would already be a dead man, even if he was on the verge of death right now. Retrieving a green-colored medicinal pill, Di Shi fed it into Diyu's mouth, after which, a strand of green light seeped into Diyu's body, and the spectators instantly sensed that Diyu's life force was much more vigorous than before. At the very least, his life was temporarily preserved. However, when they thought of how this little ancestor Diyu was injured so badly today, the spectators couldn't help but to sigh. Diyu was tyrannical, yet he didn't expect that he would encounter someone from the Medicine Sovereign Valley, who feared nothing in the heavens or earth, almost taking Diyu's life away. After he was healed, who knew if Diyu's personality would restrain itself a little? If Di Shi had arrived a step later, Diyu would already be a dead man. If Diyu died, even if Di Shi slaughtered all these people to avenge him, it would be useless. More and more people gathered here. All of them had expressions of interest on their faces. Di Shi's eyes were cold to the extreme. Diyu stared at him and spoke in a low voice. "Brother, help me kill them all. Kill them all. Don't worry, I will avenge you," Di Shi calmly replied. Yet his voice contained an intense killing intent. He stared at the people in the surroundings as he commanded, "Protect the little young master well." "Yes," everyone respectfully replied, protecting Diyu tightly. However, Di Shi took a step out, his gaze sweeping over the crowd as an aura of savagery enveloped the entire space. Azure light flashed as a ferocious primordial bird appeared behind him. It was none other than the silhouette of an azure rock. He stared at Qin Wentian, his countenance cold as he stated, "Don't know the immensity of death." Di Shi had personally witnessed Diyu almost being killed by Qin Wentian. One could very well imagine the rage in his heart. Everyone in the royal sacred region knew how much Di Shi doted on this younger brother of his. Even if these people had extraordinary statuses, and even if the Holy Maiden of the Medicine Sovereign Valley was here, Di Shi wouldn't care. As an era-suppressing genius, there was no need to doubt his talent and boldness. Why would he care about the identity of his enemies? "Careful," Yin Mingyi warned in a low voice, after which, the group of them all moved towards Qin Wentian. Di Shi's strength was extremely terrifying. They naturally could feel it. Most probably, no one here would be able to block him. Qin Wentian gripped the scarlet demon halberd in his hands tightly. This was the first time he faced off against an era-suppressing genius. Not only that, the cultivation base of Diyu was 2 levels higher than him. From the earlier clash, he already knew that he had no way to contend against Diyu. However, his battle intent still gushed forth as he madly lunged towards Diyu. An era-suppressing genius, this was the target he wanted to defeat. Deep in his bones, deep in his blood, there was a burning excitement. This fellow. The spectators from afar could feel the battle intent radiating forth from Qin Wentian. Was he crazy? He was only at the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper, and even if his bloodline wasn't weak, didn't he know who he was facing? This was Di Shi, an era-suppressing genius who had killed many at the 9th level of Heavenly Dipper before. The battle where Di Shi rose to fame was when he was at the 6th level of Heavenly Dipper. In that battle, he was surrounded by experts from a powerful sect. There were many geniuses from that sect, and many of them were at the 7th or 8th level of Heavenly Dipper. However, after a single battle, all of them were slaughtered by Di Shi. From then on, Di Shi's name shook the entire royal sacred region, and he was hailed as an era-suppressing genius. Facing such a character, Qin Wentian's battle intent actually gushed forth. How could the spectators not be shocked? Di Shi moved, he didn't waste words. His baleful eyes flickered with a terrifying killing intent, and his speed was as fast as lightning, much faster compared to Qin Wentian. Behind him, the shadow of an azure rock manifested, and his entire person transformed into a beam of azure light. His palms smashed downwards, and although it seemed simple, It caused Qin Wentian to fall into a desperate situation. His entire person was enveloped by a baleful demonic phantom. Fiend transformation art. Qin Wentian's heart pounded. His body transformed as demonic armor enveloped him. He didn't retreat, but rather advanced instead, rushing forward. Given his opponent's speed, it was extremely difficult for him to evade. Since that was the case, the only option left was to clash head-on. With a howl of rage, the scarlet demon halberd in Qin Wentian's hands unleashed his strongest attack. The dreamscape gushed into his opponent's mind. Yet how resolute was Di Shi's will. His eyes were wide open, gleaming with a baleful light. That resolute will of his made it, so that he wouldn't be affected by the dreamscape in the slightest. In his eyes there was only a single word, kill. Azure light flashed. That incomparably gigantic claw actually blocked the scarlet demon halberd, forcibly stopping it. The power of the scarlet demon halberd originated from the power of the dreamscape, but Qin Wentian's current strength wasn't enough to unleash the full might of the scarlet demon halberd. Although he was able to amplify the power of the dreamscape, it wasn't enough to affect Di Shi. But even so, with the sharpness of the scarlet demon halberd in addition to Qin Wentian's attack, the might of a single strike was extremely terrifying, yet it was actually blocked by Di Shi's attack. Di Shi grabbed out with his palm, causing Qin Wentian's arm to tremble. The scarlet demon halberd was flung to the side, and the treasured light transformed into a howling ferocious primordial bird, tearing towards Qin Wentian's body. The terrifying might contained within it felt as though it wanted to tear Qin Wentian into pieces. Ice seal. Yunmingyi coldly snorted. The power of ice sealed Di Shi's body, but it had no way to block his attack. Thunder God slash. Chu Meng and Ouyang Quangxing both unleashed terrifying attacks at the same time. The might of thunder and lightning slashed downwards, blasting towards Di Shi. However, Di Shi didn't even bother to glance at them. Merely at the 4th level of Heavenly Dipper, no matter how strong their attacks were, how could they threaten him? Astral light erupted forth as Qin Wentian retreated with explosive speed, his entire person transforming into a series of afterimages. Where do you think you're going? Di Shi coldly snorted. A terrifying pressure enveloped Qin Wentian, causing him to feel as though his entire body was enveloped by treasured light. It was as though he had sunk into a quagmire, and even the stellar transposition technique was no longer effective. Scram! Qin Wentian's Yuanfu howled in rage. His finger pressed down in the air as a violent surge of sword qi gushed forth, instantly transforming into a terrifying sword tempest that gushed towards Di Shi, wanting to devour him. Di Shi furrowed his brows. His palms blasted downwards as a green glow engulfed everything. Numerous ferocious primordial beasts howled in rage, penetrating through the chaotic flow of sword qi, blasting towards Qin Wentian. Puchi. Fresh blood spurted out as a bloody wound appeared on Qin Wentian's chest. At the same time, his body finally broke out of Di Shi's attack range as he hurriedly retreated backwards. What a powerful attack! I have no way to defend against it. The battle intent radiating from Qin Wentian was as strong as ever, but he had to admit that he wasn't Di Shi's opponent now. An era-suppressing character was truly powerful. He wasn't someone a genius like Yi Kongfan could compare to. Today you will die for sure. Di Shi continued stepping downwards, only to see a beam of sword light slashing through the air, shooting towards Di Shi. Di Shi lifted his palms and blasted out explosively, colliding against the incoming sword qi. However, he actually couldn't block it at all. The sword qi directly tore apart the palm imprint, and continued on its way towards Di Shi. MHM. Di Shi's brows furrowed as the baleful aura he exuded grew even more intense. He blasted out with his palms once more as an azure light flashed, colliding against the sword qi. Instantly, the sword qi was destroyed. A beam of light flashed by, instantly appearing in front of Di Shi. This person's entire body was filled with sword intent, pure and clean, akin to a sword. Although he couldn't be considered handsome, he gave off an extraordinary feeling, exuding the aura of a supreme heaven chosen. Ji Feishue from the Battle Sword Sect. Di Shi stared at his opponent, his battle intent towering up into the skies. This was the first time he met someone who was equally as famous as him. He's Ji Feishue. The expressions of the spectators stiffened. Ji Feishue from the battle sword sect? How lively! A light laughter drifted over from afar. The gazes of the spectators turned over, only to see a flawlessly beautiful silhouette appearing. This young woman was actually comparable to the holy maiden of the Medicine Sovereign Valley. She exuded an aura of fragility, causing people to want to embrace her and protect her. Lin Xian, she's here as well. This person was none other than Lin Xian. She smiled lightly at Qin Wentian. Sir Qin is truly extraordinary. To think that you actually managed to attract 3 era-suppressing geniuses here. As the sound of her voice faded, the spectators were all startled. 3? Other than Di Shi and Ji Feishue, could there be one more? Even Di Shi and Ji Feishue started to search. Very swiftly, in a certain direction, in an inconspicuous location, they saw a figure exuding magnificence through the generations. This person was clad in white, and with just a single glance, he gave off an extraordinary feeling. Not only that, his figure was slender and extremely handsome. The flowing wind isn't romantic, the calm lake splits the moon. He shoots down the 9 heavens. Gu Lufeng. Ji Feishue murmured as a look of admiration appeared on his face. This person was the one he admired the most out of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses. Chapter 560. Gu Lufeng. Ji Feishue's voice caused the gazes of everyone to freeze as they stared at that magnificent character. Flowing wind and flying snow. Both of them had arrived today. Gu Liufeng's white robes fluttered in the wind. His handsome countenance was as calm as still water, without the slightest ripple. This caused the hearts of many females from the major sects to pound. How handsome! Gu Lufeng is really as handsome as the rumors say. Those females mused in their hearts as they stared at the quiet white-robed young man. Gu Lufeng was definitely a legendary character in the royal sacred region. He came and went like the wind, appearing here today, but tomorrow, he would be tens of thousands of miles away. Gu Lufeng had never joined any sect before, and was extremely mysterious. The moon-beheading saber was cold, the calm lake severing the moon. The sun-shooting bow was cool, shooting the 9 heavens. One saber, one bow, unrivaled among those of the same generation. His saber could reap lives, his arrows could reap souls. There were people who said that Gu Liufeng's saber was as handsome as his person. The saber light was smooth yet poignant. His arrows were as carefree as his person, the bowstring moving. The reason why flowing wind and flying snow were placed together was because Gu Lufeng was proficient in the saber, while Ji Feishue was proficient in the sword. Their saber arts and sword arts were often compared by others, but if they were to fight, Gu Lufeng should be stronger because his cultivation base was at the 8th level of Heavenly Dipper. As for Ji Feishue, he was younger than Gu Lufeng and was rumored to be at the 6th level of Heavenly Dipper. But now, he seemed to have already stepped into the 7th level. These two were the targets of admiration for many females from the major sections. Especially for Gu Lufeng. There were many rumors about him in the royal sacred region, and many beautiful females from the major sects took the initiative to pursue him. However, Gu Lufeng chose to focus on the martial path, and didn't pursue romance. Hence, the title Flowing Wind is not romantic. The calm lake severing the moon, shooting the 9 heavens came into being. How could such a seemingly perfect man not be liked by others? Even the princesses of ancient countries and holy maidens of great sects were willing to marry him. And their sects didn't have any objections. It would be best if they could pull Gu Lufeng, who didn't belong to any sect, into their own sect. Wouldn't that be the best of both worlds? Naturally, the number of gazes Lin Xian attracted definitely wouldn't be any lesser compared to Gu Lufeng. Gu Lufeng was the lover of the dreams of many women. In that case, Lin Xian, the number 1 beauty under the heavens, who was born with a delicate demeanor, would naturally be the dream lover of countless men. Just a single glance at her would cause the desire to protect her to blossom in their hearts. Just like what Qin Wentian had said, if purely comparing beauty, Lin Xian might not be as perfect as Mo Qingcheng. The hearts of the crowd were filled with excitement. 3 era-suppressing geniuses, Fairy Lin Xian of the Celestial Maiden sect, and the Holy Maiden of the Medicine Sovereign Valley, Mo Qingqing, all appeared at the same time. From afar, there were even more people madly rushing over here. Those from the Battle Sword sect also arrived. They came together with Ji Feixue and walked to the side of Qin Wentian, staring at the silhouettes of Ji Feixue and Di Shi. Qin Wentian naturally knew of Ji Feixue. He was the 8th personal disciple under Sword Sovereign Ling Tian. Duan Han had once introduced this senior brother to him. Although Ji Feixue was younger than Duan Han, because he entered the sect earlier than Duan Han, he could be considered as the 8th senior brother of Duan Han. Duan Han was the 9th personal disciple, Ji Feixue was the 8th, and Lin Shui was the 7th. Upon seeing the scene in the air, how could the crowd not understand which sect Qin Wentian was from? So it turned out that he was from the Battle Sword sect. No wonder he was so arrogant, directly wanting to kill the little ancestor of the Supreme D clan. Since when had the disciples of the Battle Sword sect been afraid of anyone? Just looking at the lineup before them, if Di Shi didn't give up, the Supreme D clan would definitely suffer. Not only did they have to face the Medicine Sovereign Valley, they had to face the Battle Sword sect as well. Not only that, Lin Xian seemed to be acquainted with the young man who wanted to kill Diyu. She referred to him as Sir Qin. Hence, the identity of Qin Wentian attracted the attention of the crowd. They all wanted to know who this young man was. He seemed to have an ambiguous relationship with the Holy Maiden of the Medicine Sovereign Valley, as though they were a pair of lovers. Within the Battle Sword sect, comprehending 14 sword strikes, in the ancient country of Yi, he joined forces with the Holy Maiden of the Medicine Sovereign Valley to cure the human emperor's poison, aiding the human emperor in quelling the rebellion. He killed Yi Kongfan with a cultivation base at the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper, and the envoys of the Immortal Martial Realm sent him the Immortal Martial Medallion. He is the foster son of the human emperor, Qin Wentian. At this moment, among the crowd, a scholar-like figure spoke, revealing Qin Wentian's identity, causing the crowd to be startled. They didn't expect this young man to have such an impressive background. They had all heard of the rebellion in Yi. The humiliation the Violet Thunder sect suffered. Yi Kongfan was killed by a young man at the 5th level of Heavenly Dipper, and this young man was accepted as the foster son of the human emperor, becoming a companion of the Holy Maiden. When this news first circulated out, no one knew if it was true or false. But now that they saw Qin Wentian almost killed Diyu for the sake of Mo Qingqing, they all understood that the rumors were true. Comprehending 14 sword strikes, killing Yi Kongfan, a disciple of the Battle Sword sect, the foster son of the human emperor, the lover of the Holy Maiden of the Medicine Sovereign Valley, and the holder of the Immortal Martial Realm Medallion. Seems like this young man was also a Heaven's Chosen. It was only because he was together with an era-suppressing genius that his radiance was overshadowed. If it wasn't for Di Shi's appearance earlier, his radiance would have been the most dazzling here, almost claiming Diyu's life. Things are getting more and more interesting, the hearts of the crowd mused. Draw your swords. Di Shi stared at Ji Feixue, his battle intent towering up to the heavens. Azure light flashed as a gigantic ferocious bird appeared behind him, staring at Ji Feixue with sinister eyes. Encountering a character on the same level as him, how could Di Shi not fight? He wanted to see what capabilities Ji Feixue had to be on the same level as him. Swish, swish, swish. Sword Chi whistled as a row of ancient swords appeared behind Ji Feixue. The ancient swords hummed as the sword intent they exuded was terrifying. For swordsmen, there was nothing they couldn't conquer. At this moment, Ji Feixue exuded an indomitable aura. An azure light flashed. Di Shi's body transformed into a beam of light as he sped towards Ji Feixue. His speed was terrifying, bringing with it a towering pressure. Azure runes flashed as Di Shi's palms slammed out towards Ji Feixue. It was as though a fearsome ferocious bird of prey was trying to grab Ji Feixue as a terrifying screech echoed out. Ji Feixue's palms trembled as a sword appeared in his hands. With a wave of his hand, a beam of sword light filled with destructive might slashed out, directly severing the sharp claws of the ferocious bird of prey. A raging wind gusted as a hurricane manifested. A surge of demonic chi permeated the heavens and earth as an incomparably gigantic ferocious bird appeared in the air. It stared down at Ji Feishue as it flapped its wings frenziedly. In an instant, boundless runic light flashed, transforming into a ferocious bird of prey that flew towards Ji Feishue. The attack power of any one of these ferocious birds is sufficient to tear apart an expert at the peak of the 7th level of Heavenly Dipper. The hearts of the spectators trembled when they felt the violent might of the birds. However, they only saw sword chi revolving beneath Ji Feishue's feet. His footwork was exquisite, and his swordsmanship was even more exquisite. His sword danced about unceasingly, transforming into a rain of swords. Finally, the rain of swords converged into a waterfall of swords that flowed against the current, tearing everything apart. Die. Ji Feishue's sword light pierced through the air. That waterfall of swords collided with the gigantic ferocious bird of prey in the air, causing a terrifying shockwave to erupt forth. The body of the ferocious bird of prey was forcibly severed, as though the sky itself was being sliced apart. Disher retreated into the air, his baleful eyes staring down at Ji Feishue. The two of them actually had no way to injure each other. Both of us are heaven chosen. Why don't we compete again in the immortal martial realm? I'm afraid Sir D won't be able to achieve your wish today. Lin Xian gently spoke. Disher turned his gaze over, his eyes gleaming with a resplendent light. His silhouette flickered as he instantly vanished, rushing towards the direction of Lin Xian. Fairy, since you can bring calamity to the masses, why don't you bring calamity to me, Disher, first? A cold voice rang out. Lin Xian's countenance didn't change. A bright light flashed as numerous clones manifested. Her fingers strummed the strings of her zither as the melody of slaughter shot towards Disher. However, Disher merely waved his hands, destroying the melody of slaughter unceasingly. The wings of the ferocious bird flapped frenziedly as a terrifying hurricane tore apart Lin Xian's clones. Lin Xian's voice rang out in all directions. Xian was just speaking casually. Sir D, why must you bully a weak girl like me? If I can bring Fairy away, it can be considered as my wish being fulfilled. Disher tyrannically spoke, actually wanting to capture Lin Xian. His actions were exactly the same as his younger brother Du. From afar, Gu Lufeng still calmly stood there. At this moment, a gust of wind brushed past his white robes as a bow appeared in his hands. It was none other than the sun-shooting bow. Busy. Disher's gaze abruptly shifted over. He actually felt an extremely dangerous aura locking onto him. Shifting his eyes, he saw Gu Liufeng's arrow pointed right at him. Although they were separated by a few thousand meters, it felt as though the distance between them was so close. MHM. The crowd all turned their gazes in Gu Liufeng's direction, only to see that handsome silhouette exuding an unmatched magnificence. His long robes fluttered in the wind as he released his grip. In an instant, the arrow pierced through the air, directly arriving before Disher. The speed of this arrow was simply unheard of. Disher explosively retreated. His speed was already extremely fast, yet he still couldn't outrun this arrow. With a howl of rage, Disher's palms turned green, exuding an indomitable will as he slapped out towards the arrow. Numerous runic lights flashed, transforming into ferocious birds that blocked the arrow. However, piercing sounds rang out unceasingly as the birds were penetrated. Disher hurriedly evaded. A light piercing sound rang out as a drop of blood blossomed in the air. Disher's shoulder was grazed by the arrow as a trail of blood flowed out. How powerful! The surroundings fell into silence. Gu Liufeng's reputation of being able to shoot through the 9 heavens wasn't undeserved. Although his cultivation base was higher compared to Disher, he was still able to injure Disher with a single arrow. Such tyrannical strength caused the heartbeats of the crowd to quicken. Some of the female cultivators stared at Gu Lufeng with a strange glint in their eyes. However, that handsome eyes of his didn't waver at all. He kept his bow and arrow, as though he had just done something extremely ordinary. After which he turned and departed the area. Xian thanks Sir Gu. Lin Xian stared at the departing silhouette as a brilliant light flashed in her eyes. Although Gu Lufeng shot out an arrow, he didn't even glance at her. Gu Lufeng. Disher stared at the departing silhouette as his battle intent towered up into the heavens. His palms touched the bloodstains on his shoulder. There was a terrifying corrosive energy there, and it was precisely this energy that allowed the arrow to break through his defenses, drawing blood with a single strike. Gu Liufeng's saber was as powerful as his arrow, able to sever throats with a single strike. Chapter 561. Several figures clad in white appeared beside Lin Xian, protecting her in the center. Lin Xian smiled at Di Shi as she spoke in a gentle voice. Although both of you are part of the 8 era-suppressing geniuses, there's still some disparity between us. Sir Di's strength isn't just a little bit weaker compared to Gu Lufeng. Not only that, in terms of bearing, Sir Di actually vented his anger on me because of Xian words. How disappointing. Gu Lufeng, I will naturally avenge the death of that arrow. As for our strength, our cultivation bases are different. Who is stronger and who is weaker, we will naturally know after we enter the immortal martial realm. An azure glow radiated from Di Shi as his eyes gleamed with sharpness. He stared at Lin Xian as he faintly spoke. As for venting my anger on Fairy Lin, that's complete nonsense. Di Shi only wanted Fairy Lin to accompany me for a chat. How could I bear to destroy a flower so ruthlessly? Young Master Di's method of inviting people is truly unique, Lin Xian faintly commented. Fairies beauty charms all living beings. Naturally, I have to use extreme methods. Since Fairy is unwilling, I won't force you. Di Shi's silhouette flickered as he stood in the air. His gaze once again turned to Qin Wentian as a cold killing intent gleamed in his eyes. He pointed his finger at Qin Wentian. Do you think that just because Ji Feishui can protect you, you will be safe and sound? Today you injured my brother. No matter who you are or what your identity is, you are destined to die today. As the sound of his voice faded, Di Shi's silhouette dashed out once more. Ji Feishui coldly snorted. His silhouette flickered as his sword appeared in his hands. With just a thought he could unleash his sword. However, at this moment, Di Shi's silhouette abruptly flickered as he changed directions, moving towards a group of people. Over there, Fan Lu and the maidens from the Medicine Sovereign Valley were present. Impudent. Ji Feishui knew that he had been tricked. His silhouette flickered, yet how fast was Di Shi's speed? Be careful. Qin Wentian called out. Yin Mingyi blasted out with her palms as a surge of frost energy gushed towards Di Shi. At the same time, Qin Zheng stepped out as he unleashed spatial lacerations. However, he couldn't block Di Shi at all. Di Shi stretched out his palms as a gigantic bird manifested, tearing apart all attacks as it lunged towards them. The countenances of Fan Lu and the rest drastically changed. Di Shi was simply too powerful, regardless of his speed or his attacks. Bang! Astral light erupted as the few of them simultaneously unleashed stellar transposition. Where do you think you're going? Di Shi roared in rage as he blasted out with his palms. Treasured light radiated forth as numerous ferocious primordial birds tore through the air. Get lost. Chu Mang and Ouyang Guangxing's countenances drastically changed. Qin Wentian's eyes flashed with a cold light as a layer of spatial light enveloped his body. Senior brother, help me. Qin Wentian spoke. Duan Han and the others beside him nodded, and Qin Wentian stepped forward. Astral light erupted as he executed stellar transposition, directly heading in the direction of Du and the others. Duan Han immediately understood Qin Wentian's intentions, and a similarly cold light flashed in his eyes. Kill. A terrifying light flashed in the center of Qin Wentian's brows as a terrifying will of will gushed forth. Du, who had just recovered a little, instantly screamed in agony, "Save me!" Di Shi's countenance changed. His attack had already landed. The fearsome primordial bird blasted Fan Lu and the others away as fresh blood splattered through the air. Di Shi initially wanted to kill all of them, but Du's screams of agony caused him to instantly turn and rush towards Du's direction. However, Ji Feishui's sword light had already arrived, enveloping this entire space within a screen of swords. Get out of the way! Di Shi howled in rage. His bloodline surged as an even more terrifying primordial bird manifested, transforming into an azure rock that exploded forth. You are too impudent. How could Ji Feishui step aside? With a flick of his wrist, he instantly slashed out a total of 49 times, His sword might lacerating apart the void, blocking Di Shi's path of retreat. You dare! A thunderous roar shook the heavens and earth, causing the entire space to tremble. Astral light flashed in the air, converging into a constellation. Slash. Duan Han had no hesitation as he slashed out with his sword. The entire space transformed into night, enveloping all the protectors of Diyu. Qin Wentian, Duan Han, and the others naturally knew that there were already celestial phenomenon ascendants here. Not only for their opponents, there were ascendants on their side as well. When the major powers headed to the immortal martial realm, there would always be ascendants accompanying them. Not long after Di Shi arrived, these ascendants were already waiting in the shadows. It was just that as ascendants, they wouldn't easily interfere in battles between juniors. Even if there were casualties, they wouldn't interfere. And precisely because both sides knew that the ascendants of the major powers had already arrived, they all thought that this battle would end here. That was until Di Shi made a move against Fan Lu and the others, completely enraging Qin Wentian. Hence there was this scene. Diyu was a heaven's chosen of the younger generation of the Supreme Di clan. His cultivation talent wasn't inferior to Di Shi, and in the future, there was a very high possibility that he would become an era-suppressing genius. Upon seeing Qin Wentian and Duan Han actually wanting to kill Diyu, the ascendants of the Supreme Di clan naturally had to stop them. I didn't interfere. How would it be your turn to interfere? A beam of sword light flashed through the air, slashing towards the constellation. At the same time, a resplendent constellation millstone appeared, transforming into a tempest that separated Qin Wentian and the others from the ascendants of the Supreme Di clan. A silhouette stood in the air. It was none other than Shi Xian and the others. The ascendants of the Battle Sword sect and Yi country had already acted, while the ascendants of the Medicine Sovereign Valley were protecting Mo Qingcheng. In their eyes, Mo Qingcheng's safety was above all else. Now that the battle was about to escalate, the first thing they thought of was to protect Mo Qingcheng. Leave! The supreme ascendants of the Supreme Di clan roared in rage, gesturing for their subordinates to bring Diyu away. Too late. The beam of light from the center of Qin Wentian's brows frenziedly shot into Diyu's sea of consciousness, causing Diyu to scream in agony. The sword light in the darkness was still as bright as ever. Qin Wentian manifested a pair of demonic wings, and with a speed akin to a raging wind, he stabbed out with his halberd towards the crowd of Supreme Di clan's Supreme Di clan. However, this halberd strike vanished without a trace. Careful! The experts in front of Diyu were extremely nervous. They couldn't see the location of Qin Wentian's Scarlet Demon halberd, and could only unleash a large-scale attack, forming a human wall in front of Qin Wentian as they frenziedly unleashed their attacks. Busy. Astral light flashed. Qin Wentian transformed into a series of afterimages, appearing extremely blurry in the darkness of the night, almost impossible to see clearly. Poochie. A light sound rang out. Qin Wentian's afterimage finally appeared directly above Diyu. When the Scarlet Demon halberd appeared once more, it pierced through Diyu's head, ending his life. Diyu didn't even have the time to scream. Arg! The experts from the Supreme Di clan frenziedly attacked Qin Wentian. At the same time, the spatial scroll on Qin Wentian's body flashed with an intense light as countless attacks blasted over, causing Qin Wentian to cough out a mouthful of blood. But after that, a spatial light flashed as his body directly vanished from this space. Diyu! The experts from the Supreme Di clan roared in rage. Di Shi also frenziedly attacked Ji Feishue. With a howl of rage, the space around him trembled unceasingly. His eyes were bloodshot as he let out a low-sounding howl. Di Shi! Ji Feishue slashed out with his sword as he coldly spoke. This battle has already ended. You were the one who caused the death of your younger brother. Don't blame others for this. What sort of character was Di Shi? How could he endure such provocation? His attacks grew increasingly frenzied. Azure light flashed as the ferocious primordial spirit tore apart the heavens and earth. Ji Feishue completely adopted a defensive sword technique, and although Di Shi's attacks were powerful, it was still hard for him to injure Ji Feishue. The two of them were originally evenly matched. As for Fan Lu and the others, they were all injured. Mo Qingcheng led the experts from the Medicine Sovereign Valley and passed some medicinal pills to them while ensuring their safety. On the other side, the experts from the Battle Sword sect and Shixian's side also held an absolute advantage against the experts from the Supreme D clan. Those from the Supreme D clan hugged Diyu's corpse as they howled in rage. Yet there was nothing they could do. Today they would definitely suffer a loss for sure. They had lost a young genius, yet they couldn't do anything to Disher at all. Not only that, the culprit who killed Diyu, Qin Wentian, had already used a spatial scroll to vanish. Earlier he had only used the spatial scroll because he wanted to evade the combined attacks of those geniuses. If not, even if Qin Wentian didn't leave, Disher wouldn't be able to do anything to him. This time around, Disher is going crazy. His younger brother attacked Qin Wentian's friend, causing Qin Wentian to go berserk. Qin Wentian spared no expense to kill his younger brother. If not, both sides wouldn't have fought. The hearts of the spectators mused. Initially, they also thought that the battle wouldn't happen. After all, both sides had experts in the shadows, and it would be very difficult for them to shed all pretense of cordiality. But who would have thought that the winds and clouds would change so drastically? Disher was too arrogant, which led to such an ending. Naturally, this could only be blamed on Diyu for his arrogance. Most probably he didn't expect that today would be the doomsday of a young genius like him. Staring at the crazed look on Disher's face, the hearts of the spectators mused. Although Diyu had temporarily died, it was still hard to say what would happen in the end. Disher would definitely take revenge, but would Qin Wentian be able to withstand Disher's revenge? Also, these friends of Qin Wentian, Disher wouldn't spare a single one of them. They could only pray that they wouldn't meet with them in the immortal martial realm. After all, celestial phenomenon ascendants weren't allowed to enter the immortal martial realm. Rumble. A towering rage towered up into the skies. Finally, Disher no longer bothered with Ji Feishua. He soared up into the air, his gaze staring disdainfully at Mo Qingcheng, Fan Lo and the others. After which, he glanced at his younger brother Diyu as he howled in madness. The immortal martial realm shall be your doomsday. Disher howled, his voice shaking the heavens and earth, causing the eardrums of the spectators to ache. Go! Disher roared again. The experts of the D clan carried Diyu's corpse and soared up into the skies, departing from this place. Evidently, they knew that they wouldn't be able to do anything to Disher in this situation. But as they stared at their departing silhouettes, everyone understood that the seed of hatred had already been sown. It was impossible for Disher and the D clan to give up on revenge. Ji Feishua frowned. After which, he turned to Duan Han. We have to find junior brother Qin as soon as possible. In the future, all of you have to be more careful. Try not to roam around alone. This Disher doted on his younger brother a lot, and now that he saw his younger brother dead, I'm afraid he would go crazy for revenge. That's also because he deserved to die. Duan Han coldly spoke. They were all prepared to give up, yet Disher had actually triggered this huge battle. However, they were all silently on guard, knowing what they should do. Since the seed of hatred had already been sown, they could only be more careful in their actions in the future. What an interesting fellow. From afar Lin Xian laughed lightly. That Sir Qin was truly crazy. When he saw Disher acting against his friend, he didn't hesitate to sacrifice everything to kill Diyu. You're tuning in to the Li Mei's Wuxia Whispers YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.